Chapter 856, Blood Sea's Secret News. Chapter 856, Blood Sea's Secret News. The 10 spots for the trip to cultivate in the 1,000-year Blood Sea had been decided. The 1,000-demon meet carried on as usual. Su Zimo's group had just experienced a massive battle, and the trip to the Blood Sea was going to commence after 3 days of rest. Spots of flame appeared one after another nearby the Blood Sea at night. Some of the Fiend demons huddled around bonfires. Some of the Fiend demons had huge night luminance beads circling around them, while some Fiend demons had balls of flames floating around them. There were many demonic arts that lit up the dark skies. The demons enjoyed themselves in groups of 3, 10s, or dozens, drinking and feasting. Apart from enjoyment, the 1,000-demon meet was also a rare marketplace. At the intersection of the 7 territories, there would be various stalls selling rare materials, spirit pills, elixirs, dermic weapons, or secret manuals. Everything could be found here. Most trades in the marketplace were barter trades. Some unique materials and ores were only harvested in certain territories. Therefore, many fiend demons were gathered around the marketplace. Monkey, the spirit tiger, and Ching Ching dragged the unwilling little fox to join the crowd. At the front of Ape Chatter Ridge's faction, the old ape stood with his hands behind his back and his eyes half opened. His long, white brows slumped down on both sides of his cheeks and fluttered although there was no wind. Behind him, a green-robed cultivator stood. It was Su Zimo. The two figures stood in silence and did not fit in with the bustling crowd. It was as though they had melded into the night. Suddenly, the old ape turned and asked, "You can sense it?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. For the past few days, he had a feeling that something great was about to happen. There was an indescribable killing intent within the universe that gave him an inexplicable sense of frustration. How rare. The old ape lamented. Among the fiend demons present, there were less than 10 who possessed such keen senses. To think that one of them would be a low-level fiend demon. The old ape opened his eyes and turned over. There were many stars in the distant skies. However, the trajectories of the stars looked chaotic. It was as though an invisible energy was arranging the constellations. Su Zimo frowned and asked, "Does this feeling of uneasiness have anything to do with the stars in daylight the other day?" "Perhaps." The old ape sighed. He was not certain either. Ever since the stars appeared in daylight the other day, there had never been another beguiling universal phenomenon. However, once night descended, if one looked properly, they would still be able to see the signs of chaos in the stars in the skies. They flickered constantly and were extremely abnormal. Could this have anything to do with the Blood Sea? Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled the horrific blood-colored human face he saw for a moment when they arrived at this place. That might not have been his imagination. "I don't know." The old ape shook his head. Su Zimo mulled for a moment and asked again, "What's the origin of the Blood Sea? How was it formed?" "I don't know." The old ape shook his head once again with a bitter chuckle. Su Zimo frowned. The old ape had lived for at least 5,000 years, and yet he knew nothing about the Blood Sea. From that perspective, there might be a deep background to the Blood Sea. Su Zimo asked, "Since this Blood Sea is so mystical and can gather the essence, blood and souls of 10,000 demons, was there no one who sought to uncover its secrets throughout all these years?" "There was." This time round, the old ape's tone was firm. However, his reply was contrasting. "However, they should have perished within." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. This time round, the old ape spoke before Su Zimo could ask, "I heard that there was once a grand demon that ventured into the depths of the Blood Sea but failed to make it out alive as well." "Pust." Su Zimo's mouth gaped apart slightly in shock. Even a grand demon had perished. Great demons were equivalent to conjoint bodies, mighty figures of the human race. They could make use of heaven and earth powers just by lifting their palms and were almost unparalleled experts of Tianhuang mainland. However, even those experts were devoured without a trace by this Blood Sea before them. Chills ran down Su Zimo's spine and he could not help but shudder. The old ape smiled gently. However, you don't have to worry. Given your strength, there's no way you can get to the bottom of the Blood Sea. Nothing will happen as long as you cultivate normally within it. Furthermore, for so many years, nothing had befallen everyone that cultivated in the Blood Sea. Su Zimo nodded. The old ape swept his gaze towards the direction of the Silvermoon Valley and levitating Goat Peak demons and frowned slightly. Their overlords were gone. Even the fiend demons of those territories that were headed into the Blood Sea for cultivation were missing. Under normal circumstances, killing and fighting are prohibited within the Blood Sea. The old ape said in a deep voice, however, the Blood Sea can block spirit consciousness probing. In other words, outsiders won't know about anything that goes on within the Blood Sea. Be careful. The old ape reminded. A cold glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he nodded. It was pitch black in the depths of the forest. Within the forest, a few figures appeared one after another. Listen up, this Blood Sea cultivation trip is your final opportunity to take revenge. A stern voice sounded, this is a blood-congealing bead and it's a Dao Lord Dermic weapon. It can only be activated if the 5 of you combine your powers. A blood-congealing bead. With this treasure, the 5 of us are going to steal most of the essence, blood and souls in the Blood Sea. A series of laughter sounded. That's enough. The stern voice from before hollered and continued, you guys can pretend to cultivate as per normal after you enter the Blood Sea. With the blood-congealing bead, at least 80% of the energy in the Blood Sea is going to converge towards the 5 of you. Although he is a low-level fiend demon, he's not easy to deal with. You guys must not be reckless and wait for a proper opportunity. Understood. A few voices replied in unison. Another cold voice sounded, if it comes to a fight, the 5 of you need not hesitate. Just use your essence spirit secret skills right away. You must kill him within the Blood Sea. Understood. The 5 of them agreed. The person sneered, once the Blood Sea cultivation is over and that demon is dead, the 5 of you can just cover it up with a casual excuse. Even if the old ape is suspicious, he won't be able to do anything about it. Suddenly, a metallic sound echoed from the side. Count me in? Ha ha ha. With the help of Confusion Mist Swamp, this demon is dead for sure. At the same time, in front of Vermilion Cloud Valley's faction. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley rubbed his chin and narrowed his eyes. He looked at the 2 fiend demons before him that were about to head for the Blood Sea cultivation trip in silence. A long while later, he let out a deep breath and sent a voice transmission, as though he had made up his mind about something. The 2 of you, listen up. If anything changes or if a fight breaks out within the Blood Sea, don't side with any party. Stay out of things and make sure you survive. Understood. 2 fiend demons of Vermilion Cloud Valley bowed deeply as they responded. The gaze of Vermilion Cloud Valley's overlord flickered as he looked in the direction of Ape Chatter Ridge in a seemingly casual manner, muttering, could that demon's true form truly be? Chapter 857, Absorption. Chapter 857, Absorption. 3 days passed in no time. Su Zimo and the other 9 fiend demons arrived one after another and stood still beside the Blood Sea. There were indeed streams of extremely pure energy that emanated from the Blood Sea. They were scarlet, sticky, and gave off a heavy blood stench. Killing or fighting is prohibited within the Blood Sea. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley said loudly without any emotions, there is a limit to the energy gathered within the 1,000-year Blood Sea. How much the 10 of you can absorb will depend on your individual capabilities. Head in and cultivate. The moment he was finished, a fiend demon had already leaped into midair and jumped into the Blood Sea impatiently. The fiend demon dove into the Blood Sea and disappeared with a splash. The young master of levitating Goat Peak glanced askance at Su Zimo and smirked coldly. In a flash, he disappeared within the Blood Sea as well. Thud. Thud. In the blink of an eye, all 10 of them vanished into the Blood Sea. The Blood Sea seemed like it was a world of its own from the outside world. Even the spirit consciousness of an overlord could not penetrate through the obstruction of the blood sea. Therefore, nobody on the outside could know what would happen within the blood sea, they could only guess. The overlords of Levitating Goat Peak and Silver Moon Valley exchanged glances and nodded. They were thoroughly prepared this time round and everything would follow their plans absolutely. The moment he entered the blood sea, Su Zimo felt an extremely pure energy circle around him. It was extremely rich. He was secretly delighted. After the fights of this trip, he had already sensed the opportunity for a breakthrough. With the supplement of this rich energy, he was definitely going to gain unimaginable benefits within the blood sea. Although one could not use their spirit consciousness to probe into the blood sea, there were no issues with spirit consciousness probing after entering the blood sea. Su Zimo released his spirit consciousness and saw the other 9 fiend demons before long. Among them, the 2 fiend demons of Vermilion Cloud Valley stood together. He and the fiend demon of Golden Flames Mountain occupied an area of their own. However, 6 fiend demons from Silver Moon Valley, Levitating Goat Peak, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp were grouped together and occupied the center of the blood sea. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his gaze flickered when he noticed the alliance of 6. His purpose for the trip was a breakthrough in his cultivation realm. If the 6 of them did not give him any problems, he would not provoke them intentionally. However, if they did not know what was good for them. Killing intent flashed momentarily through Su Zimo's eyes. Swoosh! Su Zimo circulated his blood chi and absorbed energy from the blood sea continuously. One after another, streams of energy surged into his body and cruised through his veins and limbs, entering every single fiber within his body. The streams of energy surged into his consciousness and fused together with the scarlet-haired Een spirit and black-haired Essence spirit. Scales grew on the body of the scarlet-haired Een spirit and he roared into the air within the consciousness, releasing a tremendous suction power. The eyes of the black-haired Essence spirit flashed with purple lightning and he absorbed the energy in the surrounding continuously as well. There seemed to be Sanskrit being sung beside him. The chaos green lotus swiveled slowly and 4 layers of 36 petals blossomed, emanating streams of misty chaotic chi. The boundless energy that surged into the consciousness was absorbed by the 2 essence spirits and the creation green lotus. With the creation green lotus and the 2 essence spirits, a vortex appeared above Su Zimo's head and began to spin continuously. If one focused their gaze, they would be able to tell that there was even a significant power emanated from Su Zimo's wrist that was absorbing the energy of the blood sea as well. The fiend demons of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley revealed envious looks. There was a limit to the energy within the blood sea. Whoever could absorb more would benefit more. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak, Silver-Robed Man and other 4 who were in the center had murderous, cold expressions when they witnessed this. The 6 of them exchanged glances and nodded. Carefully, the silver-robed man retrieved a blood-colored bead from his storage bag that was the size of a human face. It was the Tao Lord Dermic weapon, the blood-congealing bead. The moment the blood-congealing bead was brought out, the energy within the blood sea surged towards it as though they were drawn in by a massive suction power. The 6 fiend demons were delighted. This was the sort of reaction the blood-congealing bead caused before they even refined it. If the 6 of them were to refine it together, wouldn't the energy in the blood sea belong to them completely? Without hesitation, the glabellas of the 6 fiend demons shone and spirit consciousnesses entered the blood-congealing bead one after another. Buzz! For blood-colored dermic patterns shone on the blood-congealing bead. It was a supreme-grade Tao Lord dermic weapon. Whoosh! One after another, streams of energy converged towards the blood-congealing bead at a speed visible to the naked eye before gushing into the bodies of the 6 fiend demons in a rumbling manner. Look at that powerful absorption force. It's so strong that a vortex has formed. On the flat plains, a fiend demon pointed to a vortex that appeared on the surface of the blood sea and exclaimed, "Look, over there." The gazes of the demons shifted. An even larger vortex was formed in the center of the blood sea. The overlords of Silver Moon Valley and Levitating Goat Peak smiled gently and could not conceal the glee in their eyes. "What have you guys done?" The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain could not take it and stood up, questioning loudly, how can the few of them possibly create such a great stir? I've got no clue. It's only normal for these juniors to have some aces up their sleeves, the Overlord of Silvermoon Valley replied indifferently. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain had a furious gaze. What is there left for the other fiend demons in the Blood Sea to work with against such a brazen absorption method? They can't blame anyone. I've already said, it's up to their own capabilities. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak sneered, there's a limit to the energy within the Blood Sea. If your calf of Golden Flames Mountain has what it takes, he can create an equally huge stir as well. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain grit his teeth in anger but could not say anything. Within the Blood Sea. Su Zimo frowned when he sensed the activity on the other side. Naturally, he could tell that the 6 fiend demons were refining a dermic weapon, and it was a Dao Lord dermic weapon at that. Even the energy around him was drawn away forcefully by the powerful vortex created by the Dao Lord dermic weapon of the 6 fiend demons. They sure are extravagant to even borrow a Dao Lord dermic weapon for this. Su Zimo muttered to himself internally. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak glared at Su Zimo smugly with a mocking gaze. He said, "Mo, if you wish to cultivate, you can come over and beg us. If you are sincere enough, we can consider the possibility and might even agree to it." Ha 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 ha. The other 5 roared in laughter. Su Zimo's gaze was cold. Right now, he was at the peak of mid-stage and was on the brink of breaking through. There was no way he could do that if the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other 5 continued with their absorption method. There was no way his creation Green Lotus could advance to grade 5 either. Since you guys choose to be unscrupulous, don't blame me. Su Zimo's eyes lit up with blood veins in a sinister manner. Absorb. Su Zimo circulated the blood refinement Fiend Sutra and roared into the air. His body seemed to have transformed into a black hole and drew in the energy of the Blood Sea relentlessly. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was a terrifying fiend technique targeted at the bloodline. Although the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was a Dao Lord dermic weapon, it was not as powerful as the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Instantly, an even larger and more frightening vortex appeared around Su Zimo, engulfing the entire Blood Sea. Chapter 858, Breakthrough. Chapter 858, Breakthrough. The entire Blood Sea swiveled in a grand manner and caved in deeply at the center in a loud, frightening manner. The demons were all shaken. This commotion was way too great. The fiend demons below must have probably made use of some Dao Lord dermic weapon. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain glared at the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and the others with a steely expression and barked hatefully, otherwise, there's no way such a force can be created with their strength. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley exchanged glances with the other Overlords. None of them said anything. To be fair, all of them sensed something amiss. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley thought to himself, to think that the blood-congealing bead could unleash such a powerful effect within the Blood Sea. Old ape, think of something. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain sent a frustrated voice transmission in secret. The old ape sighed internally, there's nothing we can do. It's hard for us to interfere even though we know it's the doing of the few of them. In reality, the situation within the Blood Sea was extremely different from what everyone outside thought. Su Zimo and the fiend demons of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley were not the ones panicking. It was the young master of Levitating Goat Peak, Silver-Robed Man, and the other 4. The 6 of them combined their strengths to refine the blood-congealing bead with the intention of absorbing the energy within the Blood Sea cleanly before dealing with Su Zimo later on. But now, even the blood-congealing bead that was a Dao Lord dermic weapon could not match the burst released by Su Zimo. How was that possible? Even though the 6 of them were not high-level fiend demons and could not release the true might of the blood-congealing bead, how could that low-level fiend demon absorb the Blood Sea more forcefully than the blood-congealing bead? Notwithstanding the energy within the Blood Sea, even their bloodlines were moving in a turbulent manner for some unknown reason. What is this demonic art? The eyes of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other 5 were filled with horror. The fiend demons of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley had already retreated to the corners a long time ago, trying their best to absorb the remaining energy around the edges. There was not much energy left behind. Rather, against that overwhelming absorption power, the amount of energy they could absorb was almost negligible. The energy within the Blood Sea was initially intended for 10 mid-level fiend demons. But now, all of it surged into Su Zimo's body. It was not hard to imagine how much energy that was. The auras of the 2 essence spirits climbed continuously. At the same time, the aura of the creation Green Lotus became increasingly terrifying, and it spun as it received the nourishment. Upon closer inspection, luscious, green petals could be seen blossoming from the edge of the Green Lotus platform once again. Under the constant nourishment of the black-haired essence spirit, the green petals grew swiftly and rapidly. 9 more holes appeared on the Lotus platform. Right now, there were 45 holes. Green glow spewed out of the 45 Lotus holes and surged into the black-haired essence spirit continuously, causing the latter's aura to climb significantly. Grade 5 Creation Green Lotus. The black-haired essence spirit was the one that provided the nourishment of the creation Green Lotus. However, on the flip side, the creation Green Lotus could also increase the degree of refinement of the black-haired essence spirit and strengthen it. The scarlet-haired Een spirit had the easiest time absorbing the energy of the Blood Sea. That was because the scarlet-haired Een spirit was an essence spirit of the demon race to begin with. All of a sudden, the scarlet-haired Een spirit shuddered and his eyes jolted open as he reared his head and howled. Boom! Raging waves surged one after another within the consciousness. It had broken through. The scarlet-haired Een spirit was now at the late stage of the Een spirit section. In other words, it was at late stage nascent soul realm. Not only did the grade of the creation Green Lotus increase less than 15 minutes after entering the Blood Sea, even the scarlet-haired Een spirit achieved a breakthrough. Right then, a warning flashed in Su Zimo's mind. There was nothing unusual in the Blood Sea around him. However, there was a suffocating killing intent that surged over momentarily. It was an attack of the spirit consciousness. It was an essence spirit's secret skill. Although Su Zimo's eyes were closed, an image was reflected in his mind. There were 6 figures gathered around him. It was the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other 5. The 6 fiend demons glared at Su Zimo with cruel and violent gazes, looking menacing as though they were looking at a dead person. They had waited for this moment for far too long. It had to be said that the 6 of them had timed their attacks almost perfectly. Su Zimo had just achieved a breakthrough and his cultivation realm was unstable. Their attacks at this moment were definitely lethal. Whether Su Zimo could react was secondary. Even if he could, his essence spirit would not be able to gather his spirit consciousness in its unstable cultivation realm, let alone defend against their essence spirit's secret skills. They were bent on taking Su Zimo's life with this single attack. Under normal circumstances, Su Zimo would have definitely been dead. However, there was something they miscalculated. Su Zimo did not only have one essence spirit in his consciousness, he had 2. The scarlet-haired Een spirit had just broken through, but the black-haired essence spirit had yet to, because it was nourishing the creation Green Lotus. Therefore, the black-haired essence spirit sensed it the moment the 6 of them made their move. In a flash, Su Zimo made his decision and fused the 2 essence spirits together. In the blink of an eye, a brand new essence spirit appeared. His long hair swayed and was split in the middle, scarlet and black. Even his eyes were split red and black in a sinister manner. The scarlet-haired Een spirit had just broken through and his aura and cultivation realm were both unstable. However, his aura stabilized after the fusion of the 2 essence spirits. Buzz! A golden barrier formed around Su Zimo. It looked indestructible with ancient Sanskrit flashing from it faintly. After the fusion of his essence spirits, the first thing he did was to activate the Mingwang prayer beads. Even after his breakthrough to late-stage nascent soul, he was still a low-level fiend demon. If he wanted to take on the Essence Spirit secret skills of 6 top-tier mid-level Fiend demons in an Essence Spirit fight, he had almost no chance of winning. He could only retaliate after defending the 6 Essence Spirit secret skills with his full strength. Dong! 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 Dull sounds could be heard when the 6 spirit consciousnesses struck the golden barrier. Immediately after, the golden barrier formed by the Mingwang prayer beads shattered. The 6 spirit consciousnesses weakened considerably, but they were still terrifying. They could easily destroy the essence spirit of any mid-level Fiend demon. Swoosh! The 6 spirit consciousnesses barged into Su Zimo's consciousness. However, his essence spirit had already leaped onto the Lotus platform in advance. One after another, scarlet spirit consciousness dragon scales appeared on the surface of Su Zimo's essence spirit. 45 lotus seeds spewed out from the creation green lotus and a green glow flashed. Mist rose and 45 rays of resplendent light were formed, circling around his body. Cling! Clang! The moment the 6 spirit consciousnesses arrived, they were struck and cut continuously by the 45 lotus seeds. To Su Zimo's surprise, the lotus seeds emanated an extremely frightening and sharp aura that could even slice and tear any spirit consciousness. There were extremely few things that could defend against spirit consciousnesses. Even the creation green lotus could not do it. However, to think that the lotus seeds it produced would possess such a powerful effect. It was indeed true that this lotus could steal the creation of heaven and earth. The 6 spirit consciousnesses were sliced into shreds by the 45 lotus seeds. Although they still had power remaining and struck Su Zimo's essence spirit, they were blocked by the spirit consciousness dragon scales and dispersed in silence. Su Zimo heaved a deep breath of relief and smirked as killing intent flashed through his eyes momentarily. Now that he had defended against the 6 essence spirit's secret skills, he was not the one in danger. Chapter 859, Power of the Green Lotus. Chapter 859, Power of the Green Lotus. On the flat plains. The demons glared fixedly at the terrifying and gigantic vortex in the middle of the Blood Sea. However, the vortex dispersed before long and the surface of the sea regained its calmness once again. What's wrong? What happened beneath? All the Fiend demons knew that although the Blood Sea seemed peaceful on the surface, it was definitely turbulent beneath. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain could barely sit still. He looked at the side of Silver Moon Valley's Overlord from time to time. The old ape was in his usual manner, sitting on his chair as though he was asleep like an old monk in meditation. Brother, why aren't you worried at all? That young chap from Ape Chatter Ridge has an immensely unimaginable potential. Aren't you afraid that the group of them might ambush him? The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain could not help but say, let me tell you, the bunch of them from Levitating Goat Peak looks like they've lost their morals and can do anything. The old ape opened his eyes and replied indifferently, there's no use getting anxious. However, I'm not really worried about my young chap from Ape Chatter Ridge. You're that confident? The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain raised his brow. Don't forget, we can all see his cultivation realm. How is he going to fight if they use Essence Spirit's secret skills? The old ape shook his head. I don't know whether he can defeat others in battle. However, I'm sure he can at least escape safely if he's met with harm. On the other side. The Overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silver Moon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp exchanged glances and nodded. Although they could not see what was happening within the Blood Sea, it was easy to guess. It was likely that the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the others had made their move. The vortex had naturally dissipated because they had attacked and could no longer make use of the blood-congealing bead's absorption force. In truth, their guesses were not far off. It was true that both parties were exchanging blows within the Blood Sea. However, the actual situation deviated slightly from the guesses of the 4 overlords. Yet, these slight deviations were what caused the eventual outcome to differ starkly from what the 4 overlords thought. Within the Blood Sea. Although the process of Su Zimo's defense with multiple trump cards against the burst of 6 Essence Spirit's secret skills sounded long upon narration, everything merely happened within a split second. The moment Su Zimo opened his eyes, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and the other 5 sensed something amiss. "I spared your life when you provoked me previously." Su Zimo's echoed within the ears of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak. "Since you dare to lay your hands on me again today, you'll be the first to die." Swoosh! A black shadow lunged forward accompanied by a suffocating water current and arrived instantly. It was too fast. Although the young master of Levitating Goat Peak was a mid-level fiend demon and could move freely underwater, he was still someone that resided on land most of the time. There were still many things he could not adapt to underwater. Furthermore, resistance of the water current to his body was extremely great and was unlike air on the land above. However, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak had not expected that Su Zimo's speed seemed like it was even faster underwater than he was on land. The latter arrived instantly. Instinctively, he wanted to retreat and dodge. If he was on land, he would have been able to avoid this palm strike for certain. However, they were within the Blood Sea. At the end of the day, he was still a tad slower. While this opening might have been negligible to others, in front of Su Zimo, it was akin to walking through death's gates. Su Zimo's extended palm had already enveloped down in a blanketing manner. Bang! The young master of Levitating Goat Peak could not retreat in time and it was already too late for him to defend. The palm strike landed right smack on the top of his head. Cracks appeared one after another on the head of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and fresh brain juice oozed out, his essence spirit WS shattered completely. The young master of Levitating Goat Peak's eyes were widened in disbelief. He had not expected Su Zimo to survive against 6 essence spirit secret skills. Less than that, he had not expected Su Zimo to be so decisive in retaliating and spared him no chance at all. He's the descendant of an overlord, how dare. The fiend demon of Confusion Mist Swamp was alarmed and was about to berate. However, he saw Su Zimo turn towards him before he could even finish his sentence. "I don't care whose descendant you are. Anyone that attempts to kill me should prepare to die." Su Zimo spun around and shuttled through the Blood Sea like a fish in water. In a flash, he arrived before the fiend demon of Confusion Mist Swamp. The bloodline of the dragon race flowed within his body and he cultivated the spirit refinement technique of the dragon race. His body was equivalent to half a dragon's body. Dragons were able to travel through the clouds and summon rain innately, even causing floods and overturning oceans. Su Zimo was completely unaffected underwater. The true form of Confusion Mist Swamp's fiend demon was an ancient gigantic crocodile and he was not really affected underwater as well. The moment he saw Su Zimo advancing, he transformed and reverted to his true form. A gigantic crocodile appeared within the Blood Sea and his body was lined densely with tough cuticles that could even compare to defensive dermic weapons. Kill! The ancient gigantic crocodile opened its mouth and spat out an ancient saber. The handle of the saber was thick and it looked forceful with 5 dermic patterns on its blade. It was a perfect Dao being dermic weapon. From a single glance, it was clear that the saber was made from a human weapon refinement grandmaster. The dermic patterns, tempering of the handle and curvature of the blade were all extremely specific. The saber slashed down against Su Zimo's face. Its blade was extremely sharp and cut the Blood Sea into 2 right away. At the same time, an unusual fluctuation appeared in the water current behind Su Zimo. The dermic weapons of a fiend demon from Levitating Goat Peak, the woman in makeup from Thousand Snake Island and 2 fiend demons from Silvermoon Valley had arrived. Su Zimo's expression did not change as he slapped his storage bag and tossed a grayish-black mountain peak behind him as a shield. It was the ancient unique treasure, the mystic magnet mountain. On the other side, his glabella shone and a green lotus seat flew out to meet the incoming saber. It was the creation green lotus. This was the first time that Su Zimo had brought out the creation green lotus to deal with an opponent after obtaining it. The chaos green lotus swiveled slowly and was shiny like jade. It flickered with a green glow and was shrouded by chaotic chi as it struck the saber in a seemingly effortless manner. Clang! There was a crisp sound. Immediately after, silence engulfed the blood sea. Su Zimo's pupil constricted instantly. The ancient gigantic crocodile's expression froze and horror filled his eyes. The saber in the blood sea, a perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon, was lined with dense cracks after a collision with the seemingly fragile green lotus. Swoosh! The saber exploded into shards and scattered to sink into the blood sea. A perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon with 5 dermic patterns was shattered just like that. The fiend demons of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley hiding at the edge of the blood sea were shaken and choked from a few mouthfuls of seawater in their distraction. You! The ancient gigantic crocodile glared at the green lotus floating in the blood sea with such fright that it could no longer speak. Even a connate dermic weapon could not shatter that perfect grade dermic weapon. However, this green lotus platform managed to shatter his destiny dermic weapon. What was that green lotus platform exactly? Right then, he felt a sharp pain from his essence spirit. His essence spirit received an immense impact from the shattering of his destiny dermic weapon. It felt like he was being torn apart. The next moment, a green light flashed before his eyes. The green lotus platform descended and had already smashed upon his head. Chapter 860, Murdering the Spirit with Lotus Seeds. Chapter 860, Murdering the Spirit with Lotus Seeds. How tough could the head of the fiend demon of confusion mist swamp be against the creation green lotus that even managed to shatter a perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon? Swoosh! The head of the fiend demon of confusion mist swamp exploded right away and a blood mist spewed out, becoming one with the blood sea around them. Within the blood mist, the chaos green lotus retained its pristine jade green and was not stained by the blood at all. It exuded a shiny glow and was shrouded by chaotic chi. The fiend demon of confusion mist swamp was dead with his essence spirit destroyed. His headless corpse sank into the depths of the blood sea and vanished. To be fair, even Su Zimo had not expected the creation green lotus to possess such frightening killing power. It was already 100 years since he had obtained this lotus platform from the ancient battlefield. For the past 100 years, Su Zimo nourished it with his essence spirit. Finally, with the help of the blood sea before them, he managed to nurture it to grade 5. The duration taken to refine this destiny dermic weapon was considered long. Furthermore, this was Su Zimo. If it was anybody else, they would be dreaming if they wanted to nurture a grade 5 creation green lotus within 100 years without 2 essence spirits and 3 heavenly defying spirit refinement techniques. Thankfully, his patience and effort had not disappointed him. The creation green lotus was much stronger and terrifying than he had imagined. It was no exaggeration that this was something that could steal the creation of heaven and earth. Su Zimo had a feeling that this was not the only reason why the creation green lotus was mystifying. The creation green lotus would definitely shine with an even brighter radiance as his cultivation realm increases. In the blink of an eye, 2 of the 6 fiend demons that encircled Su Zimo were killed. The battle was not over yet. Cling! Clang! At the same time, clanging sounds could be heard from the mystic magnet mountain. 2 of the 4 dermic weapons that flew from behind were sucked in by the mystic magnet mountain. Although the other 2 were not sucked in, they were repelled after striking the mystic magnet mountain. The woman in makeup's expression changed as she shrieked, "What's that?" The silver-robed man had a grim look on his face and slowly said, "It seems to be the ancient unique treasure, the mystic magnet mountain. However, I don't know about that lotus platform. Everyone, watch out and keep your distance. Don't get too close to him." The remaining fiend demon from Levitating Goat Peak hollered deeply and burst in retreat. Silvermoon Slash. The glabellas of the silver-robed man and another fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley shone. They channeled their spirit consciousnesses and gathered dermic powers to release a powerful demonic art of the Silvermoon Wolf race. Swash. The 2 silver rays were blinding and tore through the blood sea, arriving before Su Zimo instantly. The temperature within the blood sea dipped instantly. The blood sea even showed signs of freezing up everywhere the silver rays passed. On the other side, the woman in makeup's wrist twisted gently and two sharp dermic weapons approached stealthily with a lethal killing intent. This was a dermic weapon refined from the snake race's poison tooth, and the mystic magnet mountain could not suck it in either. The fiend demon of levitating goat peak opened his mouth and a flying sword made of an unknown material shot out towards Su Zimo's back. At the same time, he channeled his spirit consciousness and released a demonic art. Suddenly, bone spikes made of dermic powers formed one after another within the blood sea. There were dozens of them that surged over, threatening to riddle Su Zimo with holes. Even though Su Zimo released killing moves in succession to kill 2 fiend demons, the remaining 4 fiend demons were not to be underestimated. The 4 of them could be considered as top-tier experts among mid-level fiend demons. Even Solitary Cloud was not a match for them. The combined attack of 4 fiend demons at the same time created a surge of power that was a cultivation realm above. Su Zimo was still under immense threat. Roar! Su Zimo's blood chi rumbled as he reared his head and howled. His terrifying howl pushed away the blood sea around him and created a void. Immediately after, figures of massive ancient demon kings appeared around him in succession. All of them bared their fangs and claws and were lifelike with shuddering gazes. Bloodline phenomenon. The only way he could defend the attack of 4 top-tier fiend demons was with his bloodline phenomenon. 7 wilderness demon kings appeared. The 8th demon king should be a dragon king. However, Su Zimo had only cultivated the Yin spirit section and had not started on the Yang spirit section. As such, there was only a phantom of the 8th demon king. Despite that, 7 demon kings and a phantom was enough to send shudders down the spines of the fiend demons in the blood sea. Bloodline phenomenons were only available to somebody whose bloodline power was at its limits. It was a level above tsunami blood. Bang! 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 The force of the collision between the demonic arts was massive. In the blink of an eye, the 7 demon kings dissipated. However, the demonic arts of the 4 fiend demons were rendered useless by the 7 demon kings as well. At the same time, Su Zimo controlled the creation green lotus with a single thought, and it floated towards the 2 incoming poison tooths from the back. Paw! Paw! There were 2 crisp sounds. The 2 poison tooths were smashed into dust by the creation green lotus. That was the destiny dermic weapon of the woman in makeup. Her expression changed and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were locked onto Su Zimo with bewilderment and shock. She felt shudders from the phantom of the 8th demon king. It was a memory from the depths of her soul and bloodline. A fear that was embedded in her bones. This was an absolute suppression of the bloodline. The creation green lotus smashed over. Although it seemed gradual and slow, it arrived instantly. The woman in makeup's heart skipped a beat and she snapped out of her stupor. Hurriedly, she laid down barriers made with dermic powers to shield her from the creation green lotus. At the same time, she had the intention to retreat. She wanted to escape from the blood sea and Su Zimo while the dermic power barriers shielded her from the creation green lotus. However, immediately after, she realized that she was wrong. Against the creation green lotus, her dermic power barriers were like pieces of paper and were absolutely useless. The creation green lotus floated and crushed them with ease, giving chase like a shadow. Fear surged into the heart of the woman in makeup. Suddenly, she realized that against the green lotus platform, her methods were completely useless. She could not even block it for a single second. A decisive look flashed through the woman in makeup's eyes. She was going to abandon her physical body. Abandoning her physical body to escape the blood sea with her essence spirit was better than having her essence spirit destroyed here. Swash! A thumb-sized snake slithered out of the top of the woman in makeup's head and sped towards the surface of the sea with a bright glow. The moment her essence spirit escaped, her head was crushed by the creation green lotus. That single moment was the difference between life and death. The woman in makeup looked down with a sense of trepidation. Her essence spirit would have been destroyed if she was a tad too slow. In her relief, a mysterious change happened in the green lotus platform beneath. Shoo! 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 Suddenly, 45 lotus seeds burst forth from the holes of the green lotus platform and turned into rays of light. They intertwined with one another and burst over with an extremely sharp aura. It was too fast. Although her essence spirit was quick to escape, the 45 lotus seeds caught up before long and pierced her essence spirit entirely. Poof! 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 Her essence spirit was completely defenseless against the 45 lotus seeds. Ah! The essence spirit of the woman in makeup let out a final shriek before its glow dimmed rapidly. It was destroyed on the spot. Chapter 861, Total Annihilation. Chapter 861, Total Annihilation. Su Zimo had already vanished from his original position when the creation green lotus killed the woman in makeup. Swoosh! The sound of water currents echoed. When the fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley glanced around, his eyelids twitched and he was scared out of his wits. A pair of shuddering eyes filled with boundless killing intent had appeared right in front of him. Instinctively, he wanted to turn and flee. However, before long, the scene of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak's death flashed through his mind. His true form was a Silvermoon wolf and his speed within the Blood Sea would definitely be affected. There was no way he could escape from Su Zimo's pursuit. If he chose to escape, there would be no chance of survival and he would definitely follow in the footsteps of the young master of Levitating Goat Peak. I've got to give it my all. The fiend demon of Su Zimo roared and lunged at Su Zimo with his sharp claws. At the same time, he opened his mouth and chomped down at Su Zimo's neck. He knew his chances of winning against Su Zimo in melee combat were slim given his strength. His only hope was for the silver-robed man and another fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak at the side to attack at the same time and hold Su Zimo back. However, his hopes were dashed. Earlier on, there were 6 fiend demons. However, in the blink of an eye, 3 were killed. If it was anybody else, they would have been stunned by such overwhelming means as well. The silver-robed man and fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak were a major cultivation realm above Su Zimo. However, at that moment, there was a hint of hesitation in both their eyes. Should they advance or retreat? That single moment of hesitation was enough to declare the death of this fiend demon from Silvermoon Valley. You must have a death wish. Su Zimo did not dodge or avoid and strode forward. With lightning speed, he grabbed the lower jaw of the Silvermoon wolf before him. How powerful was Su Zimo's physique? The Silvermoon wolf could not close his mouth at all. His wolf paws scratched against Su Zimo's chest and tore through the latter's green robes. However, the sound of metal could be heard and sparks flew everywhere. The eyes of the Silvermoon wolf widened in disbelief as he glared at Su Zimo's chest. There were scarlet scales that could be seen faintly. Su Zimo harumphed coldly and circulated his blood chi. Green veins popped up on his arms and his flesh expanded as he exerted strength. Shing! Su Zimo ripped the Silvermoon wolf into 2 by the mouth. An essence spirit fled hurriedly within the blood mist. Su Zimo caught up and destroyed it with a single slap before it managed to flee far away and it perished within the blood sea. Run! The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak and the silver-robed man no longer hesitated. Both of them turned to flee in different directions with frightfully pale expressions. As long as they could escape from the blood sea and spill the beans on everything that happened within, Mo was bound to die and nobody would be able to protect him. It's too late for you to escape now. Su Zimo's voice echoed behind the 2 of them in a chilling manner. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak was fervently swimming up with all his might. Without any warning, he felt a sharp sense of danger pierce through his back. Instinctively, he looked down. Su Zimo was not chasing him. Instead, he was closing in behind the silver-robed man like a leech. How could that be? A question crossed the fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak's mind. Since Su Zimo was not chasing him down, where did the sensation of danger come from? Could it have been his imagination? In his bewilderment, Su Zimo, who was hunting down the silver-robed man not far away, suddenly turned and looked over. The next moment, the Fiend demon of levitating goat peak's vision was filled with an extremely bedazzling luster. It was as though a blazing sun lit up in Su Zimo's eyes. It illuminated the depths of the blood sea for a moment. A scorching column of light tore through the blood sea and shot towards the Fiend demon of levitating goat peak's head instantly with an incomparably frightening aura. That's a visual technique. The thought crossed the Fiend demon of levitating goat peak's mind, and he only had enough time to tilt his head slightly. However, the column of light shattered the other half of his head. His essence spirit could not survive against the focus of illumination eye. Instantly, it disintegrated into ashes. Far away, the Fiend demons of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley, who were initially not involved in the fight, felt chills run down their spines at the moment and broke out in shudders. In slightly more than 10 breaths, 5 Fiend demons were buried in the depths of that bottomless blood sea. On the flat plains. Although the demons discussed among themselves, they watched the blood sea keenly. Ever since the mighty gigantic vortex disappeared, the blood sea had not been peaceful. None of them knew what was going on beneath. However, the surface of the sea surged with waves that crashed onto the shore from time to time. The 7 overlords stood in the air and looked down into the blood sea as though they wanted to see what was going on within. Even the old ape's expression was slightly solemn. More than 10 breaths later, the waves on the surface of the sea subsided. Before long, the blood sea became peaceful again. However, for some unknown reason, the tranquility caused the tension in the air to increase. The tranquility resembled the calm before a storm. All of a sudden, a wolf's head popped out on the surface of the blood sea. It was the silver-robed man. That was the #1 territorial lord of Silvermoon Valley. All the demons had sharp gazes and recognized the identity of that wolf's head instantly. The face of the wolf's head was filled with helplessness, anxiety, fear and horror. Save. The silver-robed man's head was barely exposed and he managed to shout a single word. However, immediately after, in front of countless gazes, the silver-robed man's figure plummeted as though he was dragged into the blood sea by some force. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley narrowed his gaze with a nervous expression, his fists were gripped tightly and even his arms trembled slightly. All the demons were in an uproar. The blood sea could block spirit consciousness and all sounds. It was only at that moment that the demons were truly certain something huge had happened within the blood sea. What could have afflicted the silver-robed man with so much fear? The moment that thought crossed the minds of the demons, the surface of the sea opened up once more and an essence spirit escaped, it too as the silver-robed man's essence spirit. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley was delighted and heaved a deep sigh of relief. An escape of the essence spirit could ensure one's survival at least. However, his heart skipped a beat before it could calm down. Before the silver-robed man's essence spirit could escape far after it broke out from the surface of the sea, the waters churned and a gigantic hand of blood reached up and scooped. Poof! The gigantic hand of blood grabbed the silver-robed man's essence spirit and disintegrated it with a single squeeze. Swoosh! The gigantic hand of blood dispersed into blood and returned to the blood sea. All the demons were dumbfounded. Nobody expected the silver-robed man who was about to escape to die right in front of everyone. He could not avoid his death eventually. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley's expression froze. He was not the only one, the other 6 overlords did not manage to react to it as well. Everything had happened way too quickly. Who could have expected the silver-robed man who had escaped the blood sea to be devoured by it once more? Instantly, questions filled the minds of the demons present. Who dragged the silver-robed man down? What was that gigantic hand of blood? Apart from him, how were the other 9 fiend demons in the blood sea doing? Chapter 862, Fight of the Overlords. Chapter 862, Fight of the Overlords. A deathly silence engulfed the vicinity around the blood sea. Even the 7 overlords had grim expressions as they stood in the air and looked down at the blood sea, none of them dared to do anything reckless. At that moment, they could not help but recall some of the legends pertaining to the 1,000-year Blood Sea. Suddenly, the surface of the sea caved in and swiveled slowly. Before long, a gigantic vortex was formed. The vortex that had vanished earlier had reappeared. Now that the silver-robed man was dead and the fates of the other people were unknown, who was the one who created this gigantic vortex? The Blood Sea surged with raging tides and a frightening might, as though an ancient fiend celestial in the depths of the Blood Sea was awakening. Little Fox murmured softly with a worried expression, "Is he going to be fine?" "Don't worry." The spirit tiger replied, "First has a tough life. None of those fiend demons can threaten him." Monkey said deeply, "I'm guessing that it's even possible that this gigantic vortex was created by him." Right then, 3 figures flew out of the Blood Sea. The demons were alarmed and turned to look. "It's the fiend demon of Golden Flames Mountain. Those are the 2 fiend demons of Vermilion Cloud Valley." All the demons exclaimed. Worried that the same situation from before might happen once again, the overlords of Golden Flames Mountain and Vermilion Cloud Valley reacted extremely quickly and decisively. Both of them reached out to pull the 3 figures back instantly. However, the gigantic hand of blood from earlier did not reappear. What's going on? What happened beneath? Before the Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain could ask, the Overlords of Silvermoon Valley and Levitating Goat Peak had already closed in with sharp gazes and stern looks on their faces. Dead. They're all dead. As though he had received immense shock, the eyes of a fiend demon of Vermilion Cloud Valley were filled with boundless fright, although he had already left the Blood Sea. Dead? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak asked loudly, "Who is dead? Make yourselves clear." This fiend demon of Vermilion Cloud Valley shuddered from the holler and could not speak at all for a moment. The other fiend demon of Vermilion Cloud Valley at the side composed himself gradually and gulped. Not long after cultivating in the Blood Sea, the young master of Levitating Goat Peak, the number 1 territorial lord of Silvermoon Valley and the other 4 fiend demons attacked Mo to contest for resources. However, the fiend demon paused briefly and took a deep breath. However, the 6 of them were all killed by Mo and are now dead. Ah! A series of exclamations could be heard from the demons. They were greatly alarmed. 6 fiend demons encircled someone, but all of them ended up dying with their essence spirits destroyed. That was indeed quite a tragic outcome. In that case, the gigantic vortex before them should be the doing of Mo. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley let out a breath of relief. Thankfully, he instructed his 2 fiend demon underlings to avoid any fight that broke out within the Blood Sea. How is that possible? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak grit his teeth with a steely expression and snarled word by word, "Look at the cultivation realms and combat strength of the 6 of them. If they use their essence spirit secret skills at the same time, how can that lowlife defend?" The 3 fiend demons that escaped from the Blood Sea remained silent. In reality, it was true that the 6 essence spirit secret skills did not manage to injure Su Zimo. The old ape was relieved. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain was relieved as well, as he chuckled. So, some people tried to go for wool and came back shorn. How deserving. The Overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp had grim expressions and cold gazes. The losses for them were way too immense this time round. The few fiend demons that entered the Blood Sea had immense potential and might have even broken through to become high-level fiend demons within the next 1,000 years. However, all 6 of them were buried in the Blood Sea right now. He has to pay with his life. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak said with a cold, murderous voice. That's right. The Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp's voice was metallic. This demon is so ruthless and has no regards for us at all. Nobody will be able to protect him today. Foo-foo. Suddenly, the old ape laughed and said indifferently, "The entire situation has been explained properly. Your underlings were the ones that attacked first and wound up being killed because they were too weak. So, what do you mean by ruthless if that's the case?" Fighting and killing is prohibited within the Blood Sea. However, your underlings dared to make a move. Did they respect the rules of Thousand Demon Valley? Who gave them the courage to do so? The old ape's tone became increasingly sharp. His two long, white brows fluttered. Although he looked aged, he exuded a dominance that could not be ignored. There must be a reason why they attacked. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley said deeply, I don't know what cultivation technique that demon released or treasure he has in his possession to create such a great commotion. How are the other fiend demons going to cultivate when he was absorbing the energy of the Blood Sea so brazenly? Since he wanted to benefit from everything solo, he deserved to be rounded up by the other demons. Ha 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 ha. At that point, the Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain could not help but burst into laughter. Clearly, the few of you were the ones who plotted behind the scenes for those 6 juniors to snatch away the energy of the Blood Sea. But now, you're the ones calling foul. No matter what, that demon has to die today. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's gaze flashed with a look of conviction. Huh. The old ape's aura increased relentlessly as he said in a slow manner, anyone that touches him will be an enemy of mine. Don't blame me for not showing mercy and going all out today. Old monkey, you can't protect him. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley turned around slowly. There were at least 4 Overlords on their side. What if I'm included? The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain stood out. The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island smiled gently in a nonchalant manner. There's only 2 of you even if you're included. A few Overlords glanced to the side at almost the same time. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley shook his head hurriedly and his meaty cheeks wobbled. It's none of my business. You guys can fight however you want. He had been watching coldly by the sidelines the entire time and had long recognized the stakes. On the side of Levitating Goat Peak and Silvermoon Valley, apart from revenge, a greater reason why they wanted to kill Su Zimo was because they saw him as a threat. This was a low-level fiend demon that possessed such terrifying combat strength. If they did not kill him while he was weak, they would definitely be doomed in the future. Furthermore, the few Overlords could tell that there was probably some precious treasure in Su Zimo's possession. Everything else aside, his physical body alone was a peerless treasure. Of course, with the old ape and Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain in the way, it was extremely difficult for the Overlords of Levitating Goat Peak and the other territories to kill Su Zimo. The Overlord of Vermilion Cloud Valley chose to stand by the sidelines. At the very least, he would not be targeted no matter which side stood victorious. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak said slowly, Old monkey, hand that demon's life to me and I can compensate you with a perfect grade Dao Lord Dermic weapon. The demons were all shaken. Even in the cultivation world, a perfect grade Dao Lord Dermic weapon was extremely rare, let alone in the world of demons where they had no knowledge of weapon refinement. The old ape laughed and shook his head. Even if you give me a Dharma treasure, it's worth less than his life, let alone a Dao Lord Dermic weapon. Since that's the case, prepare to die with him. With that said, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak suddenly struck. He opened his mouth and spat out 2 spears, thrusting them towards the old ape's head. The moment the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak made a move, the Overlords of Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp made their moves as well. A fight between the Overlords had broken out. Chapter 863, Danger. Chapter 863, Danger. After one became an Overlord, they would gain many fiend demon underlings and a vast territory. At their level and status, they would almost never fight unless there was an unresolvable feud. Who would have thought that the trigger point of a fight between Overlords would be a low-level fiend demon? Scram! The old ape roared and his blood chi rumbled. He swung his fists like a pair of stone hammers against the 2 incoming spears. Clang! The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak shuddered and his palm felt numb. He almost lost his grip on his spears and they nearly flew. How strong! The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak felt his heart skip a beat. At the same time, the old ape swiped his waist and retrieved a pair of stone dumbbells that were shaped like ancient padlocks, waving them. Clang! 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 The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley released his saber, the Overlord of Thousand Snake Island released her cat Rs, and the Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp released his dark gold halberd. All of them struck and sparks flew everywhere. Although it was 1 against 4, the old ape was not disadvantaged with his destiny dermic weapon. Kill him! The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley hollered and waved his arm. All the high-level fiend demons of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp charged over. There were more than 100 of them. However, there were less than 30 high-level fiend demons on the side of Ape Chatter Ridge and Golden Flames Mountain. One side had a few times more high-level fiend demons than the other. You guys, be careful. Yuan Linger glared at Monkey and instructed before charging into the air to fight high-level fiend demons at the other side. In midair, the high-level fiend demons converged to a fight. It was chaos on the flat plains as well. Many fiend demons took advantage of the chaos to rob others. With Solitary Cloud by their side, Monkey and the others were able to protect themselves. Innate divine powers. Divine strength. Inner vitality. Sprint. Blood drain. In midair, many high-level fiend demons reverted to their true forms and formidable, overwhelming powers burst forth from their bodies while divine powers spread everywhere. The entire world was quivering. Unlike human cultivators, demons could begin to comprehend divine powers the moment they become high-level fiend demons. The deeper their cultivations were, the stronger the divine powers became. Most fiend demons could only inherit a single divine power. A rare few fiend demons could inherit 2 divine powers. Those that could inherit 3 divine powers were almost the strongest and most frightening living beings in the world, such as the primordial 9 races. Divine powers were released in the massive battle in midair. This meant that both parties were fighting with all their might without even testing the waters. A high-level fiend demon on the side of Confusion Mist Swamp charged to the front, wanting to take the old ape head-on with his divine powers. Die! The old ape was enraged and smashed down with his stone padlocks, smashing the fiend demon into sludge. There wasn't even a corpse left. Although the old ape was aged with white brows fluttering, every single move he made released a shocking combat strength. The dignity of an overlord was not to be challenged. Although they were of the same cultivation realms, all the high-level fiend demons would definitely be knocked back if they tried to take the old ape head-on. It would be lucky if they could get out with severe injuries and a mouthful of blood. Otherwise, the normal outcome would be instant death. During this short period of time, there were already close to 10 high-level fiend demons that died in the old ape's hands. Blood dyed the skies scarlet. Only the overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp could stand against the old ape. Ha ha ha. Amazing. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain waved his gigantic, black 3-pronged halberd that was drenched with blood and roared in laughter. Brother, you're really something. The Overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp exchanged glances. Finally, they realized something. All of them had underestimated the old ape's combat strength. This old ape who seemed like he was in his twilight years was still the most frightening overlord among the 7 of them. Even the 4 overlords felt anxious at the sight of their high-level fiend demons perishing one after another. The losses were way too immense. Was it worth it to suffer great losses just for the sake of a low-level fiend demon? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak glanced at the blood sea beneath and a cold glint flashed through his eyes. The aim of this battle was not to kill the other parties in the fight. The aim of this battle was that fiend demon in the blood sea. You guys, head inside the blood sea to capture that lowlife alive. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak changed strategies immediately and ordered 7 high-level fiend demon underlings to enter the blood sea and capture Su Zimo alive. I'll see who is able to enter. The old ape's fur was already dyed red as he stood in front of the blood sea with a murderous aura, wielding his pair of blood-stained stone padlocks. "Old monkey, there's no need for me to defeat you. All I have to do is trap you here for the time being." With a single thought from the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak, a cage the size of a palm flew out of his storage bag. It expanded with the wind and engulfed the old ape. The cage was grayish-white and made from the bones of an unknown fiend demon, giving off a chilling and sinister aura. The old ape frowned slightly and did not dare to be careless. Although the stone padlocks in his arms were 5 tons each, he was extremely agile and darted furiously. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from the spot and shuttled to the other side. "Watch out!" the Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain shouted. The old ape's heart skipped a beat. The moment he landed, a pair of grisly white bone palms burst forth from the mud beneath and gripped his ankles. That was the demonic art of Levitating Goat Peak's Overlord. Instantly, the bone palms left 10 fingerprints on the ankles of the old ape, and the area around it turned purplish-black in a sinister manner. Shatter. The old ape stood on the ground and his blood chi rumbled. His body expanded as the blood chi around his ankle rumbled and his flesh swelled. The tremendous amount of power shattered the bone palms instantly. The purplish-black color around the ankles faded gradually. Although the old ape managed to dispel the demonic art, the bone cage in midair had already descended and trapped him within. "Break it!" The old ape hollered and wielded his stone padlocks to release his divine powers. The power within his body exploded and struck a few bones before him violently. The bone cage shook and the bones quivered as though they were about to shatter. Levitating Goat Peak's Overlord's expression changed as he yelled hurriedly, "Guys, help me. This old monkey is way too strong." "All right." The Overlords of Silvermoon Valley and the other 2 territories agreed and released streams of spirit consciousnesses into the bone cage. The stone padlocks of the old ape smashed down once again. However, this time round, the bone cage shone brightly and repelled the old ape, causing him to smash against the bones of the bone cage at the back before sliding down. The old ape stood up and charged forward again. However, he was repelled once more. This bone cage was a trump card of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Although it did not have much killing power, it was extremely difficult for those that were trapped within to break out. Furthermore, right now, it was equivalent to a fight between the old ape and 4 other Overlords. On the other side, the Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain was also surrounded by many high-level fiend demons and could not break free. 7 high-level fiend demons broke out and with lightning speed, leaped into the gigantic vortex in the Blood Sea and vanished. The dermic powers fluctuation caused by 7 high-level fiend demons leaping into the Blood Sea was so strong that even the gigantic vortex was forced to stop. The Blood Sea became peaceful once again. At the sight of that, the demons lamented internally, "Mo is doomed." 2 major cultivation realms apart, even a single high-level fiend demon could kill Mo, let alone 7. Chapter 864, Tao of the Fiend. Chapter 864, Tao of the Fiend. Outside the Blood Sea, a massive battle ensued. Su Zimo, who was within the Blood Sea, was none the wiser. Although the duration was not long, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was extremely domineering. With that fiend technique, he had already absorbed most of the energy within the 1,000-year Blood Sea. After the breakthrough of the scarlet-haired Een spirit, the black-haired Essence spirit had also broken through to late-stage, nascent soul. The continuous flow of energy surged into Su Zimo's body, tempering his body and refining his Essence spirit. Under the baptism of that energy, his body became much stronger. His cultivation realm was rising rapidly as well. The amount of energy that was enough to provide for 10 mid-level fiend demons was now absorbed by Su Zimo entirely. This effect could shock the entire world. Su Zimo let out a deep growl and his flesh expanded continuously. His figure grew rapidly at an uncontrollable pace as well. 10 feet. 20 feet. Before long, he was 50 feet tall. Furthermore, his growth did not seem like it was about to stop. If anybody was within the Blood Sea, they would discover to their shock that Su Zimo's skin had already split apart. It looked horrific with dense blood scars. It was as though his body could explode at any moment. In reality, it was lucky that Su Zimo was the one in this position. If it was anybody else, they would have exploded if they dared to absorb all the energy of the Blood Sea within such a short period of time. His bloodline churned and his powerful regeneration capabilities healed the wounds on his body continuously. Before he was fully healed, his wounds split apart again. As his figure grew, more wounds opened up on that terrifying and muscular body. He was riddled with immense pain. However, there was no hint of suffering within Su Zimo's eyes. Instead, there was a sinister look of excitement. The peak of late-stage, nascent soul. With the augmentation from such a large amount of pure energy, his cultivation realm exploded, and within a short period of time, he was already at late-stage, nascent soul realm. It seemed as though his body was filled with boundless energy. The feeling of control was amazing and intoxicating. The reason why many Fiend techniques were called Fiend techniques was because their methods were extremely brutal, and oftentimes, the person who cultivated them would receive immense power within a short period of time. The increase in strength would also raise the cultivator's dependence on the Fiend technique. If his foundation was not firm, his nature would change as well. He would become cruel, bloodthirsty, and resort to despicable means. At the end, he would sink into the Tao of the Fiends entirely. At that moment, Su Zimo showed signs of sinking into the Tao of the Fiends. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was domineering and sinister. Su Zimo had always been resistant towards it from the depths of his heart. That was the reason why he would not choose to use it most of the time. However, after he killed the Fiend Demon of Levitating Goat Peak and the other 5, Su Zimo realized that he did not have much time left. It won't be long before the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and the others found out about what happened within the Blood Sea. Therefore, he could only rely on the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra if he wanted to absorb all the energy of the Blood Sea within the shortest period of time. As he expected, with the absorption power of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he had already absorbed at least 80% of the Blood Sea's energy. His cultivation realm surged rapidly as well. If he had been cultivating normally, it would take him dozens of years' worth of effort to reach peak late-stage nascent soul from late-stage nascent soul. However, with the boost of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, Su Zimo was already at this realm in less than 15 minutes. This was the terror of a Fiend technique. Subconsciously, Su Zimo smacked his lips and his massive figure stood upright within the Blood Sea. His eyes were bloodshot and he resembled a fiend that had just walked out of hell. It was way too amazing. In fact, thoughts crossed his mind one after another. He wanted to charge out of the Blood Sea and kill all the living beings to devour their bloodlines completely. As long as he could refine sufficient fresh blood, he could achieve breakthroughs within the shortest period of time and become a void reversion or even Dharma characteristic. Nobody in this world could stand in his way. This world could not hold him back either. With that, he would be able to catch up to Dai Yu in the fastest possible speed and even get to meet her. How would Dai Yu's bloodline taste like? Su Zimo jolted out of his stupor the moment that thought crossed his mind. He felt chills all over his body and his hair stood on end. Although he was within the Blood Sea, he was drenched in cold sweat out of fear. It was way too scary. How could that be? How could I have had such thoughts? Su Zimo's eyes were widened with terror, filled with bewilderment. Although he had the same craving for blood when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in the past, his Tao heart had never wavered. He was somebody who inherited the essence of the immortal and Buddhist sects as well as cultivated their top-tier cultivation techniques. He had even studied Buddhism at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for 20 years and eventually severed his attachments to the mortal realm. Although the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was domineering, it was not enough to taint him. However, if the frightening thought of harming Dai Yu had not crossed his mind earlier on, he might not have snapped out of his stupor. In fact, there was a chance that he might fall into the Tao of the Fiends forever, unable to crawl out of it ever again. Su Zimo felt a lingering fear in his heart. Ma. Ni. Pa. Me. Hom. Sanskrit echoed through his mind. The black-haired essence spirit assumed a lotus position on the creation green lotus with a lowered gaze. He sang Buddhist sutras like an old monk and exuded a brilliant golden light. Within his consciousness, there were rays of resplendent lights that filled the entire place in a dazzling manner. Immortal chi was abound and Buddhist light spread. Under the continuous echo of the powerful Sanskrit, the blood glint in Su Zimo's eyes gradually faded and he regained clarity in his thoughts once more. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his gaze flickered. Earlier on, did he change because he had released the blood refinement Fiend sutra way too many times and everything accumulated till this point? Did his Tao heart waver because his cultivation realm had increased way too rapidly? Or was it because of some other reason? Su Zimo looked down slightly and caught sight of the bottomless, ghastly blood sea beneath him. Suddenly, the blood-colored human face flashed through his eyes once again. The face seemed like it was smiling at him. A sinister and frightening aura that could send shivers down one's spine spread through the blood sea. Su Zimo shrugged his head. Suddenly, he heard activity coming from the surface of the sea. Thud. Thud. After the splashing sounds, 7 figures dove into the blood sea. They exuded an incomparably domineering aura and sped towards him. These are high-level fiend demons. Su Zimo sensed it and was alarmed. He could see it clearly, the 7 high-level fiend demons should be from levitating Goat Peak, none of them were from Ape Chatter Ridge or Golden Flames Mountain. This was big. It did not take Su Zimo long to realize that something massive must have happened outside the blood sea. What should he do? Su Zimo's mind spun as the 7 figures approached rapidly. Although he had many trump cards, he had almost nothing that could pose a proper threat to high-level fiend demons. Although Baron of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness could affect high-level fiend demons, it was not of much importance. He had only comprehended the tip of the iceberg for Baron and had yet to realize its true essence. Even if he released it against the high-level fiend demons at close distance, he would only decrease their lifespans at the speed of 100 years per breath. For high-level fiend demons whose lifespans were up to 10,000 years long, 100 breaths per breath was nothing much. However, these high-level fiend demons could kill him 10 times within a single breath. Chapter 865, Bubbles in the Blood Sea. Chapter 865, Bubbles in the Blood Sea. Escape. That was his only shot at survival. The difference in strength between 2 cultivation realms was great. Ordinary escape techniques would not be useful against the pursuit of high-level fiend demons. He could only survive if he released blood escape. Right then, Su Zimo swept his gaze and caught sight of an unsettling image. One after another, gigantic bubbles appeared from the depths of the blood sea. It was as though a living being was hiding in the depths of the dark sea and had just let out a breath. Although the 7 high-level fiend demons that entered the sea caught sight of it as well, none of them took it to heart. The 7 of them encircled Su Zimo in the middle expressionlessly with cold gazes as though they were looking at a dead person. The gigantic bubbles that appeared from the bottom of the sea floated. Some of them brushed past Su Zimo, but some of them engulfed the 7 fiend demons. The 7 of them were unprepared. Or rather, none of them saw the need to feel guarded against bubbles. An uneasy feeling surged into Su Zimo's heart when he caught sight of the 7 high-level fiend demons engulfed by the bubbles. Immediately after, right under his very eyes, one of the fiend demons in the bubbles exploded into a blood mist. Pust. Su Zimo jumped in shock and almost swallowed the seawater around him. He was dead. A high-level fiend demon whose strength was equivalent to a Dharma characteristic of the human race was destroyed along with his essence spirit right in front of Su Zimo. Initially, the gigantic bubble was transparent. However, at that moment, the bubble was dyed red with the blood that spewed out of the fiend demon's body. The blood-colored bubble did not pop and continued floating upwards. Su Zimo felt his neck go stiff and his limbs turn cold. A chill ran down his spine along with goosebumps. Poof. 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 Immediately after, Su Zimo heard explosions. The explosions sounded like marks of death and made him shudder. A single possibility crossed Su Zimo's mind as he held his breath and turned around slowly. Although he was prepared for it, his heart skipped a violent beat and his pupils constricted. True enough. The 6 high-level fiend demons that were initially surrounding him had already vanished, leaving 6 blood-colored bubbles that floated slowly upwards. They were all dead. The 7 high-level fiend demons had just entered the blood sea but were destroyed along with their essence spirits by these unknown gigantic bubbles. Immense fear filled his mind. In Su Zimo's path of cultivation, he rose from the bottom and defeated all the paragons in his way. He overwhelmed powerful foes and was unmatched within the same cultivation realm. He had escaped death countless times and had even wandered into a forbidden ground like the Dragon Bone Valley. Yet, he had never felt such fear before. Was it pure coincidence that the bubble brushed past him earlier on? Su Zimo did not dare to continue along that line of thought. After a brief pause, he sped towards the surface of the sea in a flash. The skies above the Blood Sea. The overlords of Levitating Goat Peak, Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp imbued the bone cage at the same time to trap the old ape. The old ape fought with his full strength but could not break free. The 4 overlords could not injure the old ape who was within the bone cage either. Although it seemed like both sides were in a stalemate on the surface, everybody could tell that the old ape was put in a passive position. As long as the 7 high-level fiend demons that entered the Blood Sea managed to capture Su Zimo, the old ape would have to admit defeat in fear of the consequences. Although the battle was ongoing, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and the others frowned slightly. The 7 high-level fiend demons had entered the Blood Sea for quite some time now, but why was there no activity? Did the 7 of them need to spend so much time against a low-level fiend demon? Right then, as though they sensed something, the 7 overlords turned over and gazed at the Blood Sea not far away. The surface of the sea was calm and peaceful. Suddenly, a blood-colored bubble rose from the surface of the sea and popped. Within it, a corpse could be seen faintly before it sank rapidly into the depths of the sea. That corpse. The overlords present frowned slightly. Although they could not see his appearance, the shape of the corpse seemed like he was one of the 7 high-level fiend demons. Immediately after, blood-colored bubbles rose from the surface of the sea one after another. They exploded at the same time. 6 corpses could faintly be seen. Coupled with the corpse earlier, there were a total of 7. This time round, the 7 overlords saw everything clearly. The 7 corpses corresponded exactly to the 7 high-level fiend demons that entered the Blood Sea. Almost at the same time, the terrifying rumors about the 1,000-year Blood Sea crossed the minds of the demons present. These rumors were rarely taken seriously. However, at this moment, the demons realized that there was a high chance that those rumors were real. Many fiend demons shuddered and moved to increase their distance from the Blood Sea immediately. Swoosh! Suddenly, a splash could be heard. A tall and mighty figure leaped out of the Blood Sea. All the demons were in an uproar. Who would have thought that somebody was still alive within the Blood Sea when even high-level fiend demons had died within? If there was a single survivor from the Blood Sea, there was a high probability that this was the killer of the 7 high-level fiend demons. Who wouldn't be wary of this mysterious and powerful existence? The demons exclaimed and scurried in all directions. Even the overlords present retreated by instinct. In the blink of an eye, it was empty above the Blood Sea, not a single fiend demon remained behind. He looks familiar. He looks like... Goodness, it's Mo. He's still alive. The demons in the crowd exclaimed. 100-foot-tall figure stood above the Blood Sea like a gigantic fiend celestial. He had shoulder-length scarlet hair, piercing eyes and a torrential aura as blood chi spread. Although his body undertook a significant transformation, there was no doubt from his appearance that he was Mo. The demons recognized him right away. The overlords of Levitating Goat Peak and the other territories had solemn expressions and did not charge over right away. They could not make out who Mo truly was and how strong exactly was he. One after another, spirit consciousnesses shot over. Before long, the demons scanned Su Zimo's cultivation. Although his cultivation realm increased, he was still just a low-level fiend demon. The overlords of Levitating Goat Peak and the other territories exchanged glances and snapped out of their stupor before long. Mo should have had nothing to do with the deaths of the 7 high-level fiend demons. It might have just been due to luck that he was able to make it out of the Blood Sea alive. The reason for that was because they caught sight of a hint of panic and fear in Su Zimo's eyes. At that thought, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's face was filled with killing intent and he growled deeply. "The 3 of you, hold back this old monkey. I'm going to go slaughter that lowlife." By the time his sentence was completed, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak had already vanished from the spot. "Old goat, how dare you!" The old ape roared furiously and charged against the bone cage once more. Boom! The bone cage shook but was not damaged still. Although the dermic power on the bone cage had weakened with one less spirit consciousness, it was still imbued with the full strength of the overlords of Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp. It would be extremely difficult for the old ape to break free within a short period of time. After Su Zimo left the Blood Sea and caught sight of the situation before him, he composed himself quickly. The old ape was trapped and the overlord of Golden Flames Mountain was in a difficult position. Nobody could save him if the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak insisted on killing him. At that thought, Su Zimo was decisive and turned to flee right away. The moment the killing intent rose in the heart of Levitating Goat Peak's overlord, Su Zimo had already escaped. "Hold him back!" The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak roared. There were more than 10 high-level fiend demons that had already withdrawn themselves to charge towards Su Zimo. Chapter 866, Bird in a Cage. Chapter 866, Bird in a Cage. You must be dreaming if you think that you can escape right under my watch. The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak sneered internally. More than 10 high-level fiend demons had just made their moves when a streak of blood light flashed through the air at an extremely fast speed to escape in a frantic manner. Su Zimo had already vanished from the spot. Blood escape. So fast. The demons were alarmed. Some of the high-level fiend demons were quick to act and struck right away. Mud and dust flew everywhere as a tornado that connected heaven and earth was formed from the flat plains. It had a massive aura and ripped towards Su Zimo. Swash! A saber created with dermic powers descended from the skies and almost split the voids into 2. Dermic powers surged and rumbled. Instantly, more than 10 demonic arts descended and threatened to drown Su Zimo. Apart from demonic arts, there were even some spirit consciousness attacks blanketing over. Be it the fiend demons on the flat plains or the fiend demons fighting in midair, everyone turned around at this moment and watched eagerly. They wanted to know the outcome of this attack. Young Master. First. Little Fox, the spirit tiger and everyone else was alarmed and shrieked. Swoosh! The blood light tore through the air and escaped 500 kilometers away. The speed of the blood light was way too fast. The demonic arts of the high-level fiend demons were a step too slow. Even the essence spirit's secret skills could not catch up to the streak of light. The strength of the spirit consciousnesses weakened beyond the range of 500 kilometers. In the blink of an eye, the streak of blood light had already escaped to the horizons. Thankfully, this was a boundless flat plains with unobstructed vision. Otherwise, the demons would have already lost sight of Su Zimo a long time ago. Everything happened way too quickly that most fiend demons on the battlefield had only just reacted to things. Roar! The old ape roared and his figure expanded. Blood chi rumbled around his body and even his snow-white brows turned scarlet like blood. Lend me your rod. The old ape roared and his spirit consciousness surged. On the flat plains, Monkey felt a load lifted from his hands. Imminent transformed into a golden streak of light and burst into the bone cage in midair instantly, gripped tightly by the old ape. Break it. The old ape held Imminent with both hands and his terrifying spirit consciousness gushed within. A golden glow burst forth and illuminated the world. The old ape swung Imminent violently against the bone cage. Boom! A deafening noise echoed. Crack! 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 Immediately after, cracks appeared one after another on the surface of the bone cage and spread continuously. The figures of the overlords of Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island and Confusion Mist Swamp shook. Their expressions were filled with horror. They had almost lost control of the bone cage completely. At the sight of that, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak hesitated for a moment before a look of conviction flashed through his eyes. Try to hold on, I'll go slaughter that lowlife in case he gives us trouble in the future. Before his sentence was finished, he disappeared in a flash and was already in pursuit of the streak of bloodlight with a cold killing intent in his eyes. He knew very well that Su Zimo would definitely be a huge problem for them if they let him off right now. More than 10 high-level fiend demons followed swiftly behind with their full might. However, the distance between them and the streak of blood light increased continuously. All of them were extremely shocked. The difference between them and Su Zimo was 2 cultivation realms and they had a complete advantage in terms of strength. Yet, they could not catch up to Su Zimo. What escape technique could produce such a frightening speed? In less than 15 minutes, they lost track of Su Zimo. The wind howled in his ears and the shadows of trees flashed past his eyes in reverse. Right now, what Su Zimo released could not be considered as blood escape. It was dermic blood escape that made use of dermic powers channeled from his essence spirits while burning his bloodline at the same time. The speed of dermic blood escape was even faster than blood escape and its burst power was even more impressive. That was also the reason why he could break out of the encirclement and shake off the tail of more than 10 high-level fiend demons hot in his pursuit. Su Zimo was calmer now, but he continued forward without stopping. The distance between them was not far enough. He had a strong blood stench on him and the only way he could not be tracked by those high-level fiend demons hunting him was if he was a certain distance away. Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, as though he sensed something. He frowned slightly and turned back as his pupils constricted. Several thousand feet behind him, a tall, scrawny figure rode on the clouds and was hot on his tail. It was the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Su Zimo frowned deeply and was secretly alarmed. To think that although he managed to shake off more than 10 high-level fiend demons, he could not shake off the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. The distance between them did not shorten. However, if the distance was maintained, it was almost impossible for him to escape from the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak either. Su Zimo did not know that he was not the only one shocked. The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was as well. Initially, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak looked at Su Zimo's escape with disdain. That was because a long time ago, he obtained an escape technique from a beast bone within an ancient ruin. Once released, he would become extremely fast and move with lightning speed. He could even catch up to the stars. He might not have the strongest combat strength among the 7 overlords. However, he was ranked number 1 in speed. He thought that he would catch up to Su Zimo within a few breaths. But now, the 2 of them were already sprinting for an hour and had left the high-level fiend demons far behind a long time ago. However, he was still unable to catch up to Su Zimo. The overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's expression was grim. Dermic powers surged from heaven and earth into his body continuously. He remained right behind Su Zimo the entire time without letting up at all. This low-level fiend demon was hiding many secrets. The potential of this demon seemed to be limitless. Because of that, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was extremely wary and even more determined to kill Su Zimo. With a cold gaze, the overlord of Levitating Goat Peak shouted as he chased, "Lowlife, even if you flee into the heavens or burrow underground, I'm going to kill you today." Su Zimo remained silent and merely continued fleeing dully. Fufu, why aren't you speaking? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak sneered sinisterly, you know it yourself. Everything you're doing right now is futile and is merely your final attempt at struggling. Su Zimo was clear that the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was trying to rile him with words. If he was distracted or affected by fear, hesitance or cowardice, his speed would definitely drop. At that time, he would die for sure. However, more than that, Su Zimo was certain that the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was not just trying to scare him. He was almost certainly dead now that he was targeted by an Overlord. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's eyes were filled with ridicule as he said coolly, "Lowlife, your escape technique sure is heavenly defying. It's definitely taking a huge toll on your body and you won't be able to last long." As an Overlord, he had not lived in vain for thousands of years. Although he did not understand much about dermic blood escape, he could almost guess the truth. Su Zimo pursed his lips tightly and remained silent still. To be fair, even if blood escape had no sequela, he was definitely incapable of comparing to an Overlord in terms of stamina or dermic powers. The two of them continued sprinting one after another. Perhaps because it was too long, Su Zimo's speed had indeed decreased and the distance between them narrowed as well. At the sight of that, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was even more certain that he had not guessed wrongly. "Lowlife, don't worry, I'm in no hurry." A cruel, playful look appeared on the face of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak as he roared in laughter. "I'll continue with this war of attrition and you won't be able to withstand it eventually." Ha ha ha. The moment he said that, the distance between them seemed to have narrowed further. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's gaze narrowed. He could clearly see that the back of Su Zimo's green robes was drenched with sweat. His ears twitched and he could even hear heavy pants coming from Su Zimo. Those were signs of fatigue. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was thoroughly relaxed. To him, Su Zimo was now a bird in a cage that could not escape. Chapter 867, Killing an Overlord. Chapter 867, Killing an Overlord. The distance between the two of them narrowed constantly. Su Zimo's figure started staggering, as though he was almost out of stamina. Furthermore, the sequela of dermic blood escape seemed to be intense. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's eyes were filled with mockery as he let out a cruel smirk. It was as though he could see the panic, fear and helplessness on Su Zimo's face right now. However, in reality, Su Zimo's back was against him. If the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak could see Su Zimo's face right now, he would discover to his shock that there was no panic, fear or helplessness on this refined face the same way he had imagined. Instead, there was only a single expression on that face, calmness. The more dangerous the situation was, the more one needed to be calm. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was filled with killing intent. However, it was the same for Su Zimo's eyes at that moment. Given his capabilities, there was no way he could escape from the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak at all. His only shot at survival was to kill the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Killing an Overlord. That was truly an ambitious thought. Even for the other Overlords, they could not guarantee that they could kill an Overlord for sure, let alone a low-level fiend demon. However, Su Zimo dared to harbor such thoughts. The situation was not completely hopeless for him. He was definitely not a match for the Overlord in head-on combat. However, he had many trump cards. Among them, one of the most important trump cards he had was the divine phoenix bone that Dai Yu left behind in his body. Within the cultivation world, it was no longer a secret that he had a divine phoenix bone within his body. Many cultivators knew that. Previously, Dao being Xian Yu of Great Xian Ruins tried to kill Su Zimo in the Great Xian Ruins. At that time, he even avoided the divine phoenix bone intentionally and severed Su Zimo's wrist. However, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was none the wiser. He did not even know Su Zimo's background properly, let alone know about the existence of the divine phoenix bone. If the power of the divine phoenix bone was triggered, it would definitely be enough to threaten the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's life. This was a massive gambit. Naturally, if he won the gambit everything would be fine. However, Su Zimo would die if he lost it. He had no other choice. Even with an utmost treasure like the divine phoenix bone, it was extremely difficult for him to want to kill an overlord. The only way he could succeed was if the other party was careless. Therefore, the sweat on Su Zimo's body and his signs of exhaustion were all faked. His aim was to lull the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak into a false sense of security. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was not wrong. Dermic blood escape did have an immense toll on Su Zimo and severe sequelae as well. However, there was something he had missed out on. Su Zimo had just exited the blood sea and there was a tremendous amount of bloodline energy within his body. Su Zimo's body was almost filled to the brim. The amount of energy could not be released within a short period of time and was rampaging through his body wildly. His body would explode if this continued on. On the contrary, dermic blood escape provided an avenue for that energy to be released. Therefore, this was the bloodline energy burned up by dermic blood escape and Su Zimo was almost completely unaffected. The distance between them closed up constantly. 1,000 feet. 500 feet. 100 feet. Su Zimo did not make a move still and his gaze turned increasingly cold. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak did not attack either. To him, Su Zimo was already a dead person. He was in no hurry and even had thoughts of playing with the other party as he closed in constantly. In the blink of an eye, they were 50 feet apart. This was a relatively close distance. However, Su Zimo held it in and continued to bide his time. He wanted to wait for a perfect opportunity to launch a lethal attack on the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. 30 feet. 20 feet. 10 feet. The distance between the two of them was 10 feet now. It was a reachable distance. Right then, a ruthless glint flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he spun around. His scarlet hair danced and he roared furiously at the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak with a lightning gaze. Roar! Behind Su Zimo, an illusory phantom of a dragon appeared and coiled into the air. He had actually let out an earth-shaking dragon roar. At the same time, Su Zimo's right eye shone with a bedazzling glow. It intensified and burst forth instantly like a blazing sun. He had released a vocal and visual technique at the same time. These two secret skills had instantaneous release times and were Su Zimo's greatest trump cards. There was no way to defend against them at this distance. If it was any other high-level fiend demon, they might have been flustered or even severely injured against such a sudden move. However, Su Zimo was facing an overlord. Dragon race? The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak frowned. In a flash, he raised his palm and shielded himself, blocking the incoming scorching beam of light in midair by a hair's breadth. Shing! Green smoke rose from the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's palm. Illumination Eye was frighteningly strong and even managed to burn the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's flesh. However, the beam of light dissipated the moment it came into contact with the bloodline of an Overlord as well. The two secret skills were dispelled by the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak with ease and he only suffered flesh wounds. In all fairness, the moment he heard that bright dragon roar, there was a hint of hesitance within the heart of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. The dragon race was one of the primordial 9 races. Although the bloodline of the dragon before him was impure and was only a remnant beast, this was still not somebody he could afford to trifle with. However, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak made his decision swiftly. Kill. The feud between them was already set. If he let Su Zimo off this time round, it was no longer letting a tiger return to its mountain, he would truly be letting a dragon return to the sea. As long as he killed this demon and erased every single trace of evidence, the dragon race wouldn't be able to say anything even if they came knocking. Furthermore, anybody from the dragon race would definitely possess a ton of treasures. If he made use of them properly, this would be an immense opportunity for him. If he could drink the blood, eat the flesh and consume the marrow of a dragon, he might become the first grand demon among the 7 overlords. The gaze of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak burned slightly. The moment the two secret skills were released, Su Zimo's eyes narrowed and he suddenly extended his right hand in the shape of a claw to grab the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's face. He had already expected that his vocal and visual technique might not be able to hurt the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Those two secret skills were only distractions. His Divine Phoenix Bone was his true killing move. However, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was none the wiser. To him, Su Zimo's grab posed no threat at all and was more like the final struggle of a dying beast. "Are you giving up?" The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak sneered and said in an unhurried and patient manner, "I heard that you have a strong physique and you're extremely ferocious in melee combat. I'll let you witness the meaning of true strength today." Instead of avoiding or retreating, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak punched forward violently towards Su Zimo's extended palm. Boom! The fist and palm connected. An incomparably domineering power struck Su Zimo's right hand and fresh blood splattered everywhere. His palm turned into a mess of flesh and blood instantly. However, that amount of power triggered the Divine Phoenix Bone in his right hand as well. Screech! In midair, the sinister cry of a phoenix echoed, piercing through metal and rock with a boundless might. A dragon's roar and a phoenix's cry. Both of them sounded from this person at the same time. Where did that phoenix's cry come from? Instantly, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's gaze flickered and he felt a sense of uneasiness. Immediately after, he experienced a shuddering aura that seemed like it could incinerate all life and destroy everything in the world. Chapter 869, Turn of Tides. Chapter 869, Turn of Tides. The flames blazed on relentlessly. Ah! The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak released a maddened roar and his blood chi rumbled and surged. A blood mist spread and gushed towards the wound on his broken arm. Sizzle! However, the moment his bloodline surged to the area of his broken arm, it was burned into wisps of green smoke before it could even spray out. Swoosh! A tremendous amount of dermic power rumbled and crushed over the divine flames. However, the divine flames shone and riddled the dermic power with holes, dispersing the latter instantly. No matter how the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak circulated his bloodline and dermic powers, he could not extinguish the divine flames on his arm. Only at that moment did the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak finally experience a sharp pain that was absolutely unendurable. His forehead was filled with sweat and he looked on helplessly as his arm was consumed by the divine flames bit by bit. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak almost passed out from the pain. In the blink of an eye, the divine flames burned to his elbow. However, it showed no signs of stopping and merely intensified. If he had no other means, the divine flames were going to cruise up his arm and extend to his body. In fact, it might even be able to burn his body into ashes. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak grit his teeth with a bitter determination. All of a sudden, he withdrew a chilling saber from his storage and circulated his dermic powers with an icy expression. With a reverse slash, he cut down violently at his own elbow. A blood mist spewed out. An arm that was burning with flames was lopped high into the air. It fell onto the ground and turned into ashes before long. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak shuddered for a moment and his expression turned paler. He had dismembered his arm. In order to protect his physical body, he cut off his arm personally. It was too ruthless. There was no way he could have survived till today if he hadn't been so decisive and ruthless. In the grass field not far away, Su Zimo endured immense pain and his bones felt like they were going to fall apart. His dragon scales had faded and his chest was in a mess of flesh and blood. It was lucky that he managed to complete his dragonification at the final moment. Otherwise, his chest would have been penetrated with that single counterattack from the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. In fact, the dermic power that attack possessed could even penetrate his consciousness through his body to destroy his essence spirit. Although Su Zimo managed to defend against the palm strike of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak, he did not have much combat strength left. To be precise, he did not even have the strength left to escape. He struggled to stand up and his right hand had already returned to normal with the divine phoenix's claw gone. Blood chi surged and tried its best to heal his internal injuries. He gazed at the broken arm of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and sighed gently internally, thinking about how regrettable it was. In the end, he was a step away. An Overlord was way stronger and harder to deal with than he had imagined. Su Zimo wanted to retreat. Although he looked wretched when he released Blood Escape earlier on, everything was a part of his plan. In fact, at this final moment, he harbored a killing intent towards the Overlord and wanted to kill his way out of his situation in a heavenly-defying manner. Unfortunately, he did not manage to succeed. Now that the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak could not be killed even with the divine phoenix's claw, Su Zimo had no other choice but to retreat. Su Zimo no longer had any trump cards that could threaten an Overlord. However, he had 2 talismans in his storage bag that was given to him by the old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, the Major and Minor Transference Talismans. The Major Transference Talisman was specially refined by a talisman grandmaster for the Great Qian Empire in the past. It could cross a major realm and transport him back to the Great Qian Palace. However, it was unsuitable for him to release the Major Transference Talisman at this moment. The situation at the Thousand Demon Meet did not seem optimistic. Su Zimo was worried with the fate of Monkey and the others unknown. Furthermore, if he were to disappear randomly without Monkey and the others knowing, they were going to go insane and might create huge trouble. The Minor Transference Talisman would create a random teleportation. Although the distance won't be too far, it could help Su Zimo escape from the threat before his eyes. Previously, Lin Xuanji used a Minor Transference Talisman and escaped with Su Zimo and Night Spirit from one of the Forbidden Grounds, the Dragon Bone Valley. Su Zimo made a decision and reached towards his storage bag. Right then, something weird happened. Before his hand made contact with his storage bag, demonic chi rumbled before his eyes. A gigantic anaconda with a grisly red forked tongue bared its sharp fangs and burrowed out of the ground. Pust. Su Zimo had a great shock. His internal organs were severely injured thanks to the palm strike on his chest by the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. Even if he could react, his body's reaction time was a tad slower. The anaconda slithered up swiftly from his ankle and coiled around him, rooting him on the spot. Demonic chi dissipated. Su Zimo lowered his head and saw that the anaconda was transformed from a rope-type dermic weapon. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak had released it long ago. The moment Su Zimo stood up, the dermic weapon descended and bound him firmly. Although the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was careless at the start and his arm was crippled by Su Zimo, he was still way too far ahead, be it in terms of experience or methods, when he fought with his full strength. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected the counterattack of Levitating Goat Peak's Overlord to be this decisive with so many variations. He tried to shrink his tendons and bones. However, the rope on his body shrank together and did not accord him with any gap to escape with. Without mistake, that rope should have been made from the tendon of an anaconda and was extremely elastic. The moment one was bound, even their dermic powers would be restricted and they wouldn't be able to escape. The Minor Transference Talisman was right in the storage bag on Su Zimo's waist. However, his hands were bound tightly and his dermic powers were sealed. He could not reach the Minor Transference Talisman at all. The tides had turned. The situation right now was far beyond his control. Indeed, it would have been a decent outcome if his gambit to kill an Overlord had succeeded. However, he would die if he lost. The price was way too great. Su Zimo did not have time to regret his actions and spent all his energy pondering about how he should escape. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak walked over slowly with a cold gaze. He glared at the refined face not far away with boundless hatred in his heart. No matter what, he was still the victor of this fight. However, the entire process was extremely treacherous. He nearly died in the hands of a low-level fiend demon. Furthermore, he even lost an arm in order to kill a low-level fiend demon. The price was way too great. The gaze of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak burned slightly. If he could make use of everything Imo possessed, including the latter's blood, flesh, bones, marrow and secret skills, to attain a breakthrough in cultivation realm with one swoop to become a grand demon, he could regrow his broken limbs and revert his physical body to before. At that time, he would be the true winner. In the blink of an eye, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was already in front of Su Zimo. He was skinny but tall and looked down at Su Zimo from above with a hint of coldness, excitement and cruelty in his eyes. He was not worried that Su Zimo might counterattack. After all, there was no way Su Zimo could retaliate when he was bound by the anaconda tendon. Furthermore, after their exchange earlier on, the Overlord no longer underestimated this demon. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was fully focused and guarded even against Su Zimo, who was restricted and was merely waiting to die. Chapter 870, Futile Efforts. Chapter 870, Futile Efforts. Even as the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak closed in, Su Zimo had not thought of any escape plan. However, there was no fluster in his eyes. Since he could not escape, he could only fight with his life. Given his character, there was no way he was going to surrender without a fight. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak seemed to have sensed it and paused in his tracks. Su Zimo's eyes were cold and a glint of killing intent flashed past. Suddenly, a gigantic bronze square tripod flew out of his glabella. The tripod was rusted and filled with cracks, looking ancient and old. It seemed like it was created countless years ago. Even the voids trembled as the bronze square tripod descended. It swung along Su Zimo's hand towards the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak violently. Immediately after, a green lotus platform that was shiny as jade appeared. 5 layers of petals spread with resplendent glows and chaotic chi spread fiercely, blanketing down the head of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. The struggles of a trapped beast. Shatter it. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was prepared for this and harumphed coldly. He did not panic nor hurry as he punched out with surging blood chi against the bronze square tripod head-on. Ugh! The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak grunted dully and actually retreated a step back. Under normal circumstances, he should have been able to shatter the perfected Lord Dharmic weapon of a low-level fiend demon casually. Even a Dao being Dharmic weapon might not be able to withstand his Dharmic power. Furthermore, this gigantic tripod looked extremely battered. As such, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak thought that he would be able to shatter it with a single casual punch. Unexpectedly, the bronze square tripod was indestructible and caused his knuckles to be smashed instead. It's just flesh wounds, nothing to be worried about. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was swift to react. Instead of a punch, he pressed gently against the bronze square tripod instead to push it away. At the same time, he slapped his storage bag and withdrew a long saber, slashing up against the Creation Green Lotus. Clang! The Creation Green Lotus was repelled. A series of cracks appeared on the surface of the saber as well and it shattered after a split second. The eyes of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak narrowed. Although his saber was only an ordinary Dao Lord Dharmic weapon, it was not something that any casual weapon could shatter. There was definitely something up with this green lotus platform. Another treasure. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak nodded to himself. The more treasures and methods Su Zimo possessed, the more excited he was. That was because he was going to steal all of those treasures and methods away. The Creation Green Lotus was repelled by the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. However, rays of green light suddenly burst forth from the lotus platform. 45 lotus seeds burst forth and green light streaked everywhere with a boundless sharpness. They shot towards the consciousness of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak as though they could slice everything in the void. It was a killing move targeted at the essence spirit. Su Zimo realized that the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was severely injured with the destruction of the latter's destiny Dharmic weapon as well. This was the moment when his essence spirit was at its weakest. However, Su Zimo was bound by the anaconda tendon and the only things he could use were the 2 destiny Dharmic weapons in his consciousness. Puny tricks. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak sneered and his glabella flashed. A terrifying spirit consciousness was released and the waves of spirit consciousness fluctuations almost materialized. Ripples appeared in midair. Before the 45 streaks of green light could pierce his consciousness, they were dissipated by the spread of the ripples. Although the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's essence spirit was weakened, this was the essence spirit of a high-level fiend demon after all. His strength was overwhelming and not to be underestimated. With the release of that spirit consciousness attack, the aura of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak weakened considerably and he panted a few heavy breaths. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's eyes shone with excitement. The Green Lantern platform was so mystifying. Not only was it powerful, the Lotus seeds within could even release an attack that targeted one's essence spirit. It was indeed a rare utmost treasure. Great, great. All of those treasures are going to be mine. Rather than enraged, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was excited instead. However, the smile on his face froze immediately after. A shuddering killing intent surged over all of a sudden and arrived instantly. His hairs stood on end and his scalp prickled. How could that be? This lowlife still has something up his sleeves. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was shocked. The two essence spirits within Su Zimo's consciousness had fused together. If the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak could enter his consciousness, he would be shocked at the sight greeting him. Within Su Zimo's consciousness, his essence spirit assumed a lotus position and sang scriptures. Behind him was the illusory phantom of a gigantic Buddha with a dignified expression. He looked down upon the world with rays of divine light hovering behind his head. Su Zimo and the gigantic Buddha opened their mouths at the same time and chanted ancient sutras. Their auras seemed to be fused together and Sanskrit reverberated through every single corner of the consciousness in a deafening manner. Su Zimo's post-fusion essence spirit was forcefully channeling a secret skill. It was a secret skill from the Great Day Rolai Sutra. Given Su Zimo's wisdom root, he already managed to comprehend this essence spirit secret skill within 100 years. However, it was clearly stated in the Great Day Rolai Sutra that this essence spirit secret skill was extremely powerful and could only be released by a cultivator at the Dharma characteristic realm. Otherwise, the cultivator's essence spirit wouldn't be able to handle it. Su Zimo's essence spirit was only at late-stage nascent soul realm. Even after fusion, his essence spirit was only at the void reversion realm at the most. It was not at the Dharma characteristic realm at all. However, he could not have so many reservations. The situation before him did not allow him any options. This was his only chance. The consciousness of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was linked to his destiny dermic weapon and the glow of his essence spirit was dim. After his arm was snapped, his blood chi was weakened. Thereafter, he dealt with the successive attacks of the bronze square tripod, creation green lotus and even the lotus seeds. Right now, he was at his weakest. If the essence spirit's secret skill could be released at this moment, there was an extremely high chance that it could kill the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's essence spirit. Rolai dermic seal. Su Zimo spoke in Su Zimo and the voids trembled. A golden light shone from his glabella and a swastika symbol gradually formed with a divine might as Buddha light radiated everywhere. The ancient symbol descended with a brilliant golden light that seemed as though it could suppress the entire world. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's eyes widened with horror. His eyes were overwhelmed by the golden light completely. Within his consciousness, his essence spirit shivered against the Rolai dermic seal and he even had an urge to kneel in prostration. He could not imagine how a low-level fiend demon could wield such a terrifying secret skill. Su Zimo's essence spirit was shivering continuously as well. The toll on his essence spirit by releasing the Rolai dermic seal was way too intense. The rate of exhaustion was frightening and was beyond what he could endure. All of a sudden, a giddy sensation surged through Su Zimo's mind and his essence spirit shuddered. Its glow dimmed rapidly and it was on the verge of falling. The swastika symbol on his glabella dimmed accordingly as well. The golden light was dispersing. The terrifying might was dissipating as well. The swastika symbol quivered endlessly before it dispersed into golden spots of light and scattered into the air. He could not manage to form the Reappearance seal eventually. Su Zimo's expression was dark and devastated. To think that all his efforts were futile at the end of the day. Ha 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 ha. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak reared his head in wild laughter with a contorted expression. He had survived. Unknowingly, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak found himself drenched in sweat. His life was hanging on a thread. He could clearly sense the terror of that essence spirit's secret skill. If Mo was a mid-level fiend demon right now, he would have most likely died today. However, that was only an if. There was no way he would accord Su Zimo the chance to grow further. Lowlife, this is life. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak retracted his smile and said coldly, "It's your fate to die here today." Chapter 871, Death of an Overlord. Chapter 871, Death of an Overlord. Don't fret, continue to gather your spirit consciousness and release your secret skill. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Su Zimo's mind. The voice sounded familiar, but he could not recall where he knew it from. Immediately after, a tremendous amount of pure essence spirit power surged into his consciousness and helped him to stabilize the Reappearance seal that was about to disperse. The essence spirit power was rich and pure with a mild burning sensation. Su Zimo's essence spirit seemed incomparably insignificant in the face of this amount of energy. The swastika symbol on his glabella that had initially dissipated into golden spots and was scattered everywhere, on the verge of complete dispersion. However, with the support of that essence spirit power, Sanskrit sounded in Su Zimo's consciousness once again and the phantom figure of the gigantic Buddha materialized. The golden spots that were initially dispersed converged rapidly and formed an ancient symbol that radiated with a blinding golden glow. The moment the golden symbol descended, the entire world seemed as though it was frozen. The symbol carried a shuddering and frightening aura. The voids were caving in. There was no power that could stand in the path of the golden symbol. The Reappearance seal suppressed everything. Ah! The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak shrieked and his eyes widened with disbelief. There was no way a low-level fiend demon could release an essence spirit's secret skill as such. With no time to hesitate, the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak channeled his weakened essence spirit and released another essence spirit's secret skill to meet the golden symbol that was floating over in midair. The two essence spirit's secret skills clashed in midair. However, there was no sound. The void around the collision distorted. Right in front of Su Zimo's eyes, the essence spirit's secret skill released by the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak was suppressed with ease by the golden symbol. It was crushed into dust and dissipated. The golden symbol merely paused briefly in midair before it printed itself onto the glabella of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak and vanished within. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak jolted. The next moment, his gaze froze up and dimmed. His expression stiffened and his life force dissipated at a rapid pace. Without dermic power to suppress the wound on his broken arm, it split open and blood gushed out in a stream. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak fell forward stiffly. Bang! He laid on the ground motionlessly. Although his eyes were widened, there was no light in them at all. The anaconda tendon on Su Zimo's body slid down as though they were no longer controlled. With his freedom returned to him, Su Zimo scanned his spirit consciousness across the body of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. All he felt was the stench of death without any life force at all. Su Zimo peered into the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's consciousness with his spirit consciousness and his heart skipped a beat. The Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's consciousness was dried up and reeked of death. There was an essence spirit that was split apart and completely destroyed. An Overlord had fallen. Even after he recalled his spirit consciousness from the consciousness of the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak, Su Zimo was still in shock and could not recover for a period of time. That was the power of an essence spirit's secret skill. Although the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak's head was completely fine without any wounds, his essence spirit was shattered completely by the Reappearance seal. Of course, this was not Su Zimo's power. If the tremendous amount of pure essence spirit power had not surged in, he would have been the one dead on the ground at this moment. Su Zimo took a deep breath and tried his best to compose himself. He surveyed his surroundings and asked in a probing manner, "Senior? Collect this demon's storage bag and get out of this place first." The voice echoed in Su Zimo's mind once again. It was calm with a hint of antiquity. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He was not clear of danger yet. The commotion here was great. The high-level fiend demons they left behind earlier must have already noticed and were most likely on their way over. The longer he lingered here, the more danger he would be in. Su Zimo's essence spirit had just released the Dermic seal and his body received a strong blow from the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. As such, his bones and tendons were aching terribly. Right now, his essence spirit and physical body were at their weakest. A single high-level fiend demon could kill him right now, let alone the fact that more than 10 were coming. Su Zimo staggered and ran to the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. He retrieved the latter's storage bag and put it away. This was the storage bag of an Overlord and there was bound to be a lot of good stuff within. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and cut off a leg from the goat and stashed it into the storage bag. He scanned his surroundings and fled in a direction. As he sprinted, Su Zimo asked softly, "Senior, are you still there?" "Yes." "Where?" "In your body." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he almost stumbled over. This time round, the person did not send a voice transmission through spirit consciousness. Su Zimo could clearly hear that the voice came from within his body. To be precise, it was his left wrist. A spark jolted in Su Zimo's mind and he had a hunch. Right then, the voice suddenly sounded, "Change your direction. There are 2 high-level fiend demons 100 kilometers in front of you." Su Zimo paused hurriedly. "To the left." The voice reminded him again. Without hesitation, Su Zimo sprinted to the left. However, his essence spirit and physical body were both extremely weak and his movement technique was sluggish. All of a sudden, a tremendous spirit consciousness emanated from his left wrist and enveloped his physical body. It rode with the wind at an extremely fast speed and vanished from the spot before long. The wind howled. Su Zimo relaxed his body and saw the shadows of trees fleeting by him rapidly. The spirit consciousness maneuvered him with twists and turns, avoiding countless dangers in the interim before finally settling down around a secluded cave. Su Zimo understood what he needed to do and headed in. The moment he entered the cave, Su Zimo looked at his left wrist delightedly. He suppressed his overwhelming emotions and asked softly, "Senior Extreme Fire, is that you?" The moment he said that, a scarlet glow burst forth from the Mingwang prayer bead Su Zimo wore on his left wrist and stopped in midair. The scarlet glow revealed its true appearance. It was the size of a thumb and seemed like it was burning with fire. Its aura was powerful as it looked at Su Zimo with a smile and a bright gaze. This essence spirit was from Tao Lord Extreme Fire, whom Su Zimo encountered more than 100 years ago in the cold lake within Song Lang mountain range. Back then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was inflicted with toxic poison and was on the verge of death. He was trapped motionlessly beneath the cold lake and endured bitterly for 5,000 years. Eventually, he met Su Zimo and left behind some belongings and messages for Su Zimo. With that, he let go of his final attachments in life and departed in a carefree manner. It could be said that a large part of Su Zimo's later accomplishments had to do with the legacy left behind for him by Tao Lord Extreme Fire. Everything else aside, Night Spirit was left behind for Su Zimo by Tao Lord Extreme Fire. Later on, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit no longer had any life force after due to the toxic poison. The single Mingwang prayer bead on Su Zimo's hand turned warm. Su Zimo made a test attempt and the essence spirit of Tao Lord Extreme Fire transformed into a streak of light, absorbed by the Mingwang prayer bead. Later on, there had been no activity. Although Su Zimo had cultivated to the nascent soul realm, he was still unable to refine the Mingwang prayer beads properly. His spirit consciousness could not probe within, and he naturally did not know about what was going on within. To think that Tao Lord Extreme Fire was reborn and saved him once again at this critical juncture. Chapter 872, Mystery of the Rebirth. Chapter 872, Mystery of the Rebirth. Senior, how are you? Although Su Zimo was delighted at Tao Lord Extreme Fire's rebirth, he had many questions in his mind. How was the poison on Tao Lord Extreme Fire dispelled? When did he awaken? Has he recovered fully? As though he could read Su Zimo's mind, Tao Lord Extreme Fire smiled gently and said, "Rest and recuperate first. I'll explain everything slowly." Su Zimo nodded. After a momentary silence, he whisked out the gigantic goat leg he cut off earlier and chuckled. "I'll be fine after eating a roasted lamb leg." He was not being a glutton. The goat leg in his hands was the flesh of an overlord and was a great tonic. Furthermore, Su Zimo possessed frightening innate regeneration capabilities. As long as he absorbed the energy of an overlord's flesh completely, his wounds would be mostly healed by then. At the nascent soul realm, demons could consume the essence of the sun and the moon. Human cultivators are able to consume sunlight and dew as well and could achieve the state of inedia without consuming any physical food. However, the goat leg was not only a great tonic, it was also a rare delicacy. There was no way Su Zimo would let this chance pass. Su Zimo took out his bronze square tripod and circulated his spirit consciousness to conjure a ball of flames. He tossed it into the tripod and hung the goat leg on it. Before long, the cave was filled with the fragrance of barbecued meat. Su Zimo reached out and tore a piece off without fear of burning his hand. He placed it in his mouth and chewed in huge mouthfuls, feeling the essence of blood chi enter his stomach and cruise through his limbs. Tao Lord Extreme Fire was only an essence spirit without a physical body and naturally could not enjoy this experience. When he looked at the flame within the bronze square tripod, Tao Lord Extreme Fire seemed to have thought of something and looked at Su Zimo's right hand with a wary expression. He asked, "Your right hand is a divine phoenix bone, right?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded and did not lie. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said sternly, "When the divine phoenix bone was triggered earlier on, the power it released was extremely scary and was at the conjoint body realm." Su Zimo was shocked. Conjoint bodies were almost the strongest existences in Tianhuang mainland. Conjoint body cultivators were referred to as mighty figures, and every single action they made possessed the might of heaven and earth. Unfortunately, given his current cultivation realm, he could not trigger the power of the divine phoenix bone. He could not use the divine phoenix bone trump card as and when he wanted either. It was mostly passive and its shocking effect could only be triggered by the strength of his opponent. "There's no need to hurry." Tao Lord Extreme Fire consoled him, "Since this piece of divine bone is within your body, there will naturally come a day when you will be able to utilize its power on your own." Tao Lord Extreme Fire looked at Su Zimo and felt emotional when he recalled the circumstances of their first encounter. To think that after more than 100 years, the young man of the past would be at this stage right now. Tao Lord Extreme Fire gazed into the distance with a nostalgic look in his eyes as he said slowly, "Actually, it's all thanks to the Mingwang prayer beads on your hand that I'm able to survive." There's no wonder why the Mingwang prayer beads are treasures that are able to support Daming Monastery. They truly possess the ability of resurrection by altering fate against the heavens. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, "The Mingwang prayer beads were created from the trunks of immortal and soul-nourishing wood on Tianhuang mainland. They have the extraordinary effect of nourishing one's soul and essence spirit. My essence spirit was initially doomed because of the toxic poison. To think that it was nourished after entering this prayer bead and managed to survive instead." When he spoke about that, Tao Lord Extreme Fire felt a surge of emotions. Su Zimo gazed at the Mingwang prayer beads on his left wrist and recalled about the past as well. Back then, he was still a Foundation establishment cultivator who entered the inheritance ground of the Fiend sects with Demoness G and fought against the Fiend heirs. To think that an unforeseen event broke out later on, a skeleton crawled out from an ancient coffin in the blood pool and nearly killed all of them within. He hid inside the stone coffin that the skeleton was buried in with Demoness G. It fell into the underground river and they managed to survive. That Mingwang prayer bead was found within the stone coffin. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed. The old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley had once explained to him the reason why the Mingwang prayer beads were lost. Several dozen thousand years ago, two paragons, the Tao Lord Blood Fiend and Monk Daming fought. Eventually, both of them disappeared with their fates unknown. The Mingwang prayer beads were lost because of that as well. Later on, Daming Monastery retrieved 3 of them with another 3 missing outside. One of them was the one Su Zimo found in the stone coffin. Within that stone coffin, there was also an extremely evil cultivation technique, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The skeleton that crawled out of the stone coffin later on was incomparable, domineering and consumed the flesh and blood of many living beings directly. The cultivation technique it used was the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. In that case, the identity of the skeleton was clear. It was Tao Lord Blood Fiend. The ultimate fiend that massacred the world dozens of thousand years ago had not truly died. Furthermore, there was a high chance that he was reborn. It was not hard to imagine. After that earth-shaking battle with Monk Daming, Tao Lord Blood Fiend lost and was severely injured. As such, he hid within the Mingwang prayer bead with his essence spirit and nourished himself within slowly. It was most likely because of the Mingwang prayer bead that he was able to survive to this era as well. That was also why Su Zimo was able to find that Buddha bead in the stone coffin. In that case, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in the coffin should have been etched by Tao Lord Blood Fiend as well. Everything seemed to make sense. However, Su Zimo was still puzzled. Why was that Mingwang prayer bead left behind in the stone coffin? Was it truly a coincidence? Furthermore, when they first encountered the stone coffin, there were gigantic chains coiled around its surface. Who left those chains behind? It was clear that the purpose of the chains was to trap Tao Lord Blood Fiend. However, why would there be a Mingwang prayer bead left behind in the stone coffin in that case? Or rather, why did the cultivator that left behind the chains not kill Tao Lord Blood Fiend outright? Naturally, Tao Lord Extreme Fire did not know what Su Zimo was thinking about at the moment and continued speaking. The first time I awakened was actually at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Su Zimo was momentarily stunned. He truly had not expected Tao Lord Extreme Fire to be awakened that early. Although my essence spirit was nourished after it entered the soul-nourishing wood, the poison in me was not dispelled and I was still in a comatose state. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, the old monk at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley was the one who helped me to dispel the poison within. At that point, Su Zimo was enlightened. Back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, the old monk exclaimed softly upon receiving Su Zimo's Mingwang prayer bead, as though he sensed something. When Su Zimo asked at the moment, the old monk gave an ambiguous reply and did not explain things. In hindsight, the old monk had already noticed Tao Lord Extreme Fire at that time and conveniently saved the latter. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, although I was awakened, my essence spirit was afflicted by the toxic poison for many years and was still extremely weak. I had almost no strength and could not offer you any help. I've watched your journey and battles throughout all these years. You did well. You did not disappoint the reputation of the human race back in Myriad Phenomenon City. Su Zimo shook his head gently with a dejected expression when he thought back about that battle. Although I won that battle, countless cultivators caught sight of my demon form. There might be no place left for me in the cultivation world. There's no need to worry. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said deeply, other sects aside, I can make the decision for 100 Refinement Sect to write your name and protect you from danger. Chapter 873, Dharma Characteristic Realms Physical Body. Chapter 873, Dharma Characteristic Realms Physical Body. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's words were firm, resolute and powerful. It was clear that he was not bothered by Su Zimo's demonic cultivation. More than that, he did not even care about the major sects or factions that had feuds with Su Zimo. Su Zimo was touched and expressed his gratitude hurriedly. At that moment, he had yet to realize the weight of Dao Lord Extreme Fire's words. He did not know what sort of a character Dao Lord Extreme Fire was in the cultivation world 5,000 years ago either. After all, in Su Zimo's opinion, no matter how strong Dao Lord Extreme Fire was, the latter was merely a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. His cultivation realm was the same as the old immortal crane, and there was no way he could protect Su Zimo. Previously, in the Battle of Ethereal Peak, the old immortal crane managed to achieve a breakthrough and became a high-level fiend demon that was equivalent to a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. However, Ethereal Peak was insignificant against a massive force like Glass Palace. Notwithstanding Glass Palace, even against the 10 upper sects of the North region, Ethereal Peak was weak and had no right to speak at all. Su Zimo truly had no other choice when he left the North region previously. In the battle at the Great Xian Ruins, he offended almost everyone from the 10 upper sects, aristocratic families and gentry clans. If he continued to stay on in the North region, Ethereal Peak would definitely protect him with all their might. However, that would also bring about great trouble for Ethereal Peak. They would be destroyed instantly, and the loss of their legacy would result in them disappearing from the cultivation world. However, Su Zimo did not know that 100 Refinement sect was not the same as Ethereal Peak. Dao Lord Extreme Fire was not the same as the old immortal crane as well. Su Zimo noticed that Dao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit had a powerful aura and seemed like he had already recovered to the Dharma characteristic realm. Senior, has your cultivation recovered fully already? Not yet, I'm only around 80% at best. Dao Lord Extreme Fire smiled gently. Initially, I thought that I would require several hundred years to recover my cultivation. To think that I benefited quite a bit from the opportunity you just received as well. Just? Su Zimo froze momentarily and was enlightened instantly. It was no wonder why he felt a suction power from his left wrist within the 1,000-year blood sea as well. At that time, he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and was encircled by the young master of Levitating Goat Peak and 5 others. Later on, he nearly became a complete fiend and did not think about the issue deeply. To think that apart from the massive boost to his cultivation realm, the energy accumulated by the 1,000-year blood sea managed to benefit Dao Lord Extreme Fire as well. Actually, the energy accumulated within the blood sea originally was not enough to recover my cultivation. Dao Lord Extreme Fire said, however, 7 high-level fiend demons entered the blood sea and died sinisterly later on. That caused the energy level in the blood sea to rise significantly and provided me with sufficient energy. The reason why I did not make a move while you were escaping was because I was absorbing the tremendous amount of energy within the blood sea. That Overlord was truly strong. If I did not recover at least 80% of my combat strength, it would have been difficult to kill him as well. That was the reason why I did not attack recklessly. At that point, Dao Lord Extreme Fire shook his head gently and lamented, however, aren't you a little too gusty? You're only at the nascent soul realm and yet you wanted to kill an overlord that was 2 major realms above you. Really now? Su Zimo felt a sense of trepidation when he recounted the events as well. An overlord was much stronger than he had imagined. He released all his trump cards and even managed to trigger the Divine Phoenix's Claw by accident. Yet, he was still unable to kill the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak. If not for Dao Lord Extreme Fire, he would have died already. Although he gained immense benefits during this Blood Sea cultivation trip, it was extremely treacherous as well. Not only was he hunted down by an Overlord, there seemed to be a latent danger within that sinister Blood Sea too. The 7 high-level fiend demons died in mysterious manners, killed with their essence spirits destroyed instantly by the bubbles from the bottom of the sea. Was it truly just a coincidence that those seemingly harmless bubbles brushed past him? Su Zimo felt a sense of trepidation when he thought about that scene. Senior, that Blood Sea. The moment Su Zimo spoke, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's expression changed and he interrupted the former, "Don't ever return to that place. There's definitely something extremely terrifying at the bottom of the Blood Sea." Dao Lord Extreme Fire said solemnly. If even Tao Lord Extreme Fire said so, Su Zimo realized that the secret within the Blood Sea was definitely not something he could deal with at his cultivation realm. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo looked at Tao Lord Extreme Fire worriedly and asked in a soft voice, "Senior, what about your physical body?" At the Void Reversion or Dharma characteristic realm, one would not die even with the loss of their physical body. However, their combat strength would weaken and they would not be able to release many dharmic arts without their physical body. Furthermore, without the protection of their physical body, one's essence spirit would become extremely fragile, exposed to the outside world. It was like somebody who was floating in a turbulent ocean without the protection of a spirit vessel. He could die at any moment. There were two ways of obtaining a physical body. The first was through assimilation. However, the requirements for assimilation were stringent and the assimilated being's cultivation realm must not be too low. The assimilation process was extremely dangerous as well, and one could be consumed instead if they were careless. Furthermore, every cultivator could only attempt a single assimilation try in their lifetime. The second was to obtain a perfectly intact physical body at the Dharma characteristic realm. However, that was no easy task at all. What sort of existences were Dharma characteristics? It was extremely difficult to obtain their physical bodies. Furthermore, let alone a perfectly preserved Dharma characteristic physical body. The greatest possibility for that was if a Dharma characteristic cultivator was killed by an essence spirit's secret skill. With that, their essence spirit would be destroyed with their physical body intact. When he heard Su Zimo's question, Tao Lord Extreme Fire swept his glance onto Su Zimo's body and asked with a fake smile, "You're not worried that I might assimilate your body?" Su Zimo froze for a moment and shook his head right away. Back in Song Lang Mountain Range, Tao Lord Extreme Fire saved his life. Earlier on, Tao Lord Extreme Fire did it again. Su Zimo did not believe that Tao Lord Extreme Fire would attempt assimilation on him. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's expression was beguiling and his voice suddenly turned sinister as he said creepily, "Although the difference in cultivation realm between us is way too great, your physique and bloodline is almost perfect and unmatched in history. It's an absolute gain for me if I assimilate you. As long as I cultivate further, I'll be able to recover to my initial self and my combat strength will be superior in fact." Su Zimo let out a chuckle and shook his head still. When Tao Lord Extreme Fire saw how firm Su Zimo was, he no longer scared the latter and returned to his normal expression. "I'm relieved that you are able to trust me. However, I've still got to remind you. At this point of your cultivation, your physique is frightening and unparalleled. There isn't any cultivator in the world that wouldn't be tempted, me included." Tao Lord Extreme Fire was speaking from the bottom of his heart completely by saying that. Tao Lord Extreme Fire continued, "The cultivation world is extremely ruthless and only the fittest shall survive. Although I'm not going to assimilate you, it doesn't mean that other cultivators won't as well. Although I saved you, there's a chance that I might have other motives as well. You must be careful in the future and not trust others easily." Su Zimo nodded. In truth, the reason why he was so firm was not only because Tao Lord Extreme Fire had once saved him. More than that, it was because of his spirit perception. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, he was forced to survive in Song Lang Mountain Range through countless bloodied battles. He walked past the gates of hell countless times on the brink of death and cultivated a unique sense that was unfathomable. That was Su Zimo's greatest backing. He could not sense Tao Lord Extreme Fire's killing intent at all through his spirit perception. Chapter 874, Phenomenon Reappearance. Chapter 874, Phenomenon Reappearance. At the end of the day, assimilation is not righteous and I'm filled with nothing but disdain for it. Although Tao Lord Extreme Fire's tone was calm, there was an indescribable pride within. If it was any ordinary cultivator, they would most likely resort to any means possible if they lost their physical bodies. Be it assimilation or any other method, nothing mattered as long as they could obtain a physical body. However, Tao Lord Extreme Fire was different. Although he lost his physical body, he did not lose the pride in his heart. Su Zimo said, if you give up on the method of assimilation, there is only one other way. However, I don't know where we could possibly find a Dharma characteristic physical body. His heart skipped a beat as he continued, there should be many people with the same circumstances as you, senior. I wonder if there are any cultivators selling the physical bodies of Dharma characteristics. He had not cultivated to the Dharma characteristic realm and was not at that level yet. However, in his opinion, there was a high chance that there would be people selling such things since there were demands. Furthermore, it was a lucrative trade that was not to be underestimated. Tao Lord Extreme Fire nodded. You are smart, there is indeed the trade of selling physical bodies within the cultivation world. Originally, Tomb's sect was the only one doing it. Later on, Corpse Refinement cult joined in as well. Tomb's sect? Su Zimo murmured, I've got a friend in Tomb's sect. If I meet him again, I can ask about it for you, senior. However, his cultivation realm is similar to mine, so he might not be able to get a physical body at the Dharma characteristic realm. There's no need. Tao Lord Extreme Fire shook his head. Although I look down on assimilation, I don't wish to occupy a foreign body either. That way, even if I recover back to before, I won't be the same Tao Lord Extreme Fire anymore. Su Zimo nodded. Even if the essence spirit was the same, there would still be a difference eventually. Furthermore, both methods have similar pros and cons. Tao Lord Extreme Fire continued, be it assimilation or a traded Dharma characteristic physical body, the origin of their flesh and bloodlines are both different from the essence spirit. As such, it will be difficult for anyone to return to their previous peak state. Su Zimo roughly understood. No matter what, the loss of one's physical body was an irreversible loss. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, actually, there's a third method apart from those two. Gather universal materials to reconstruct the skeleton and recast the flesh. Reconstruct the skeleton and recast the flesh. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat at the mention of those words. What sort of capabilities were those? Tao Lord Extreme Fire explained, actually, this is an ancient weapon refinement technique. Using the bones as the foundation and the organs as supplements, the bloodline is nourished and finally, the flesh is recast. Although the method sounds simple, the process is extremely complicated. The bones are reconstructed using universal materials, and the better the quality of the bones, the stronger the bloodline that is born. The stronger the organs are, the more terrifying the strength of the physical would be. Tao Lord Extreme Fire explained with clear details. To begin with, Su Zimo had a deep understanding towards weapon refinement and he was immersed in the explanation. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed and daybreak gradually approached. Theoretically, this ancient technique of reconstructing a body was definitely a secret skill that was only passed down within 100 Refinement sect. However, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo had a feeling that Tao Lord Extreme Fire was imparting him the ancient technique intentionally. Furthermore, the latter was extremely detailed in his explanation, as though he was worried that Su Zimo might not understand. At that moment, Su Zimo was puzzled. Not long after, he finally understood the true intention of Tao Lord Extreme Fire. In order to reconstruct a body in the most ideal way, universal materials were the most important criteria. The better the quality of the materials used for reconstructing the skeleton, the more superior the body created. According to the words of Tao Lord Extreme Fire, if the spirit materials used for reconstruction of bones were connate treasures, there was a high chance that a set of connate bones could be created. Connate bones were comparable to connate dermic weapons. The bloodline and physical body created from the connate bones would create a connate Tao body. Of course, that was an ideal situation and was not realistic. Nobody in history had succeeded doing so either. What are your plans after this? Tao Lord Extreme Fire asked after explaining the method of reconstructing the bones and physical body. I've got to return and take a look at the situation of my sworn siblings. Su Zimo said deeply, if they are fine, I'll let them know that I'll be leaving 1000 Demon Valley first to escort you back to 100 Refinement sect. He had already been in the Thousand Demon Valley for 100 years. He did not know how the cultivation world had changed after 100 years. Of course, more than that, Su Zimo was concerned about his old friends back in the cultivation world as well as Xiaoning and Night Spirit. It was time to head back. He continued, "Senior, don't worry. I'll definitely try my best to help you search for the 9 crucial materials used for reconstructing a body in bones." To begin with, Dao Lord Extreme Fire specialized in fire techniques. Therefore, the universal treasures he required to reconstruct a body were the 9 materials of Tianhuang mainland that possessed the strong fire attributes. Of course, these materials were extremely rare to come across. It was even more difficult if anyone wanted to gather the 9 of them. By now, Su Zimo had already consumed the flesh on the lamb's leg and there was only a bone left. His injuries had mostly recovered. "It's inconvenient for me to expose my essence spirit outside. It's better for me to remain hidden in the Mingwang prayer beads for now." With that said, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit transformed into a streak of scarlet light and vanished into Su Zimo's left wrist. Su Zimo tidied his attire and headed out of the cave. More than 2 hours had passed and the high-level fiend demons that wanted to hunt him should have already left. "I wonder how's the fight around the Blood Sea?" Su Zimo murmured. He scanned his surroundings, determined his direction and decided to return to the vicinity of the Blood Sea to check things out. Right then, Su Zimo's expression changed. His heart raced without warning and the entire world seemed to have turned silent, as though something big was about to happen. There was a murderous aura within the forest. Su Zimo felt his chest turn stuffy and could not breathe properly. Danger seemed to be lurking everywhere. The most frightening thing was that his spirit perception seemed to be useless. Even his spirit perception was engulfed completely by the murderous aura in the forest. This sort of situation was extremely rare. Right then, Su Zimo sensed something and spun around, glaring into the distance. "Ah!" His heart skipped a beat and he exclaimed. In the horizon not far away, above the firmaments, ancient stars appeared one after another. They moved and spun in a chaotic trajectory. Stars in daylight. This universal phenomenon had reappeared once again. However, this time round, it was extremely close to Su Zimo. The stars in the firmaments shuffled chaotically and could not help but brush past one another, creating earth-shaking sounds. Lightning flashed and thunder boomed. Countless debris fell from the collision of the ancient stars. Engulfed in flames, these meteors descended upon Tianhuang mainland like a firestorm. Bang! 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 The ground quaked and the mountains shook, as though the heavens wanted to devastate this part of the world. What happened was way too shocking. Furthermore, everything happened right in front of Su Zimo. The stars seemed to be hovering above his head with a terrifying might as they shifted, collided, and brushed past one another. The murderous aura filled the world. Instantly, it seemed as though all living beings in the Thousand Demon Valley kept silent out of fear. Under normal circumstances, the stars above the firmaments naturally had their individual trajectories. However, they would not brush past one another, let alone collide. Yet, at that moment, the stars in the skies were in complete chaos, as though they were being controlled by an invisible power. When the firmaments were filled with trouble, devastation would descend upon all living beings. Could it be? Right then, the voice of Dao Lord Extreme Fire sounded. A fiery scarlet streak of light floated out of the Mingwang prayer beads and Dao Lord Extreme Fire appeared once again. He looked up into the skies with a shocked expression and disbelief in his eyes. Chapter 875, 3 Great Sword Arts. Chapter 875, 3 Great Sword Arts. Stars in daylight. This universal phenomenon had already appeared once before the Thousand Demon meet and even the old ape did not know why. From Dao Lord Extreme Fire's current expression, it was clear that he knew something. Su Zimo could not help but ask, "Senior, what's the meaning behind this universal phenomenon? Make a move first." I'll explain to you along the way. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's essence spirit transformed into a scarlet streak of light and re-entered the Mingwang prayer beads. Su Zimo could tell that Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice seemed to be quivering slightly. He knew that this universal phenomenon was definitely far from simple. Su Zimo raised his head and looked at the position beneath the firmaments. It was extremely close to the 1,000-year blood sea. They might even come across Monkey and the others if they rushed over now. Su Zimo no longer hesitated and sped towards the direction in a flash. A moment later, Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded. He seemed to have composed himself. If I'm not wrong, a universal phenomenon as such means that an ancient sword art is about to be born. Ancient sword art? Su Zimo muttered softly. What sort of an ancient sword art would create such a great commotion and even trigger a universal phenomenon just with its appearance? Tao Lord Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, in the ancient era, there were 3 great sword arts that possessed the strongest killing powers. Each time one manual was born, there would be an accompanying universal phenomenon. The 3 great ancient sword arts are the heaven-slaying sword art, earth-slaying sword art and human-slaying sword art. Su Zimo exclaimed softly and asked in a probing manner, the 3 sword arts sound like they are connected? You're not wrong. Tao Lord Extreme Fire explained, legend has it that the 3 great sword arts were originally won back in the primordial era. They possessed frightening killing power and was the number 1 killing technique of the primordial era. In fact, it could slay immortals and fiend celestials alike. It's precisely because of the immense killing power of the sword classic that it was struck by karma and divine retribution. It was divided into 3 and was later on known in the ancient era as the 3 great sword arts. Su Zimo was alarmed. Although the sword classic was divided into 3, it could still become the 3 great ancient sword arts and bring about universal phenomenons. It was hard to imagine the original power of the sword classic. These are all enigmas of the primordial era that I had no access of originally. Tao Lord Extreme Fire continued, however, I entered a primordial ruin by accident 5,000 years ago. In there, I read about the records and legends of this matter. Suddenly, Su Zimo was enlightened. Back when he first met Tao Lord Extreme Fire in the cold lake in Song Lang mountain range, the latter recounted to Su Zimo the tale of how he entered a ruin and was hurt and poisoned by the living beings inside such that he almost died from it. So, the ruin was a primordial ruin. In that case, since Night Spirit was brought out by Tao Lord Extreme Fire from that primordial ruin, there was a high chance that Night Spirit was a life form from the primordial era as well. It was no wonder why Su Zimo could not find any records related to Night Spirit even after searching through all the ancient books in Ethereal Peak. Most lifeforms from the primordial era have already gone extinct and there were no traces of them left. Even many super sects in the cultivation world might not have any records of them, and these lifeforms were merely described with brief sentences, let alone Ethereal Peak. Tao Lord Extreme Fire seemed slightly emotional once again at the mention of the primordial ruin. It was as though he still had a feeling of trepidation when he recalled his past experience. Su Zimo steered the topic away and asked, the heaven, earth and human-slaying sword arts. From their names, it seems like the human-slaying sword art is the weakest. You're mistaken. Tao Lord Extreme Fire shook his head. Among the 3 great sword arts, the human-slaying sword art has the strongest killing power. It is said that the might of the heaven-slaying sword art is comparable to divine powers. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The divine powers Tao Lord Extreme Fire were referring to were not the innate divine powers that were comprehended by fiend demons upon advancement to high-level fiend demons. They were the divine powers that were comprehended by human cultivators after cultivating to the Mahayana realm to become patriarchs. The human-slaying sword art possessed the might of the Mahayana realm. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said softly, in the primordial ruin, there are 3 sentences describing the 3 sword arts. When the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. When the earth's killing intent is released, the dragon snake shall rise. When the human's killing intent is released, heaven and earth shall topple. Su Zimo gazed at the chaotic star alignments in the firmament and was suddenly enlightened, remarking softly, the heaven-slaying sword art is the one being born this time round. That's right. Dao Lord Extreme Fire replied, you must definitely get your hands on this sword art. If you're able to comprehend it, your combat strength will definitely explode. Su Zimo frowned slightly. However, the commotion here is so great and the overlords held the 1,000 demon meet in the vicinity. It's probably too late for me to get there. Furthermore, if I want to steal the heaven-slaying sword art away from the watch of so many overlords and countless fiend demons, that's probably going to be extremely difficult. Su Zimo was clear that with his current strength, it was unrealistic to think that he could fight against the overlords and so many fiend demons to get his hands on the heaven-slaying sword art. It was true that he had Dao Lord Extreme Fire assisting him now. However, Dao Lord Extreme Fire's combat strength was limited with the loss of his physical body. It was impossible for him to fight against the overlords with just his essence spirit. No worries. Dao Lord Extreme Fire said, don't forget, the fiend demons of Thousand Demon Valley probably do not know the reason behind the stars in daylight yet. That is your true chance. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he nodded to himself. During this short while, he had already rushed to the area beneath the firmament. Before him, a strong blood stench reeked. Many living beings must have fallen there. After sprinting for a while more, it could be seen in the distant skies ahead that there were several hundred fiend demons with gigantic bodies killing one another in midair. Roar! Roar! The roars of the fiend demons rocked the entire world. Even the void in the battlefield in midair was beginning to contort. That was a massive battle between high-level fiend demons. Among them, there were 6 figures that were particularly striking. Their auras were powerful and swept through the 9 heavens. Every single move they made caused the voids to vibrate. There was an old ape that towered at over 100 feet tall. His fur was grayish-white and he looked like he was old and in his twilight years. However, his gaze burned and he overwhelmed everyone with a blinding golden rod in his hands. Beside him, there was a bull engulfed in golden flames. He wielded a black 3-pronged halberd and barged through the demons with an unstoppable edge. The 2 overlords fought together and their combat strength was torrential. It was clear that they had suppressed the overlords of Silvermoon Valley, Thousand Snake Island, Confusion Mist Swamp and Vermilion Cloud Valley. Su Zimo shifted his gaze down and heaved in a breath. Beneath the 6 overlords, the ground cracked and gigantic fissures appeared in a frightening manner, emitting a sinister black wind. The ground was slowly protruding upwards. It was as though there was a massive, unknown object that was trying to crawl out from underground. Crack. 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 As time passed by, the protrusion on the ground enlarged and the number of fissures increased as well. Countless fiend demons stood outside the perimeter and did not dare to advance. An unknown period of time passed. All of a sudden, the world seemed to have gone silent. The next moment, the ground exploded and mud overturned. Like the explosion of a volcano, rays of resplendent light shot forth in a powerful manner. Instantly, divine lights filled the world and spread through the surroundings. Chapter 876, Thousand Demon Tomb. Chapter 876, Thousand Demon Tomb. Shoo! 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 The divine lights shot through the air and resplendent light shone everywhere. Although Su Zimo stood in the distance, his eyesight was extremely powerful. When he focused his gaze, he could not help but froze on the spot. The rays of resplendent light consisted of many dermic weapons. There were long needles, bone sabers, flying swords, bronze tripods and many other varieties. A fiend demon that was caught unprepared was pierced through the body by a ray of light. Instantly, a hole appeared with blood gushing out as he shrieked. Another fiend demon circulated his dermic art and demonic chi rumbled as he suppressed a ray of light. When he focused his gaze, his eyes lit up. The ray of light was a flying sword. It was a Dao being dermic weapon. Furthermore, there were 5 dermic patterns on it. It was a perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon. Even in the human cultivation world, a dermic weapon of this quality was extremely rare to obtain, let alone in the world of demons. Ha 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 ha. The demon gripped the flying sword and reared his head in abundant laughter. Poof. His laughter came to a stop. The fiend demon's head was pierced by a poisoned needle and his face turned green in the blink of an eye. His essence spirit was poisoned and died on the spot before it could escape from the physical body. A woman from Thousand Snake Island picked up the perfect grade Dao being dermic weapon and fled swiftly. The other fiend demons that caught sight of this soared into the air and used various methods to capture the divine streaks of light in the air. Mine is also a perfect dermic weapon. Ah. It's a supreme grade dermic weapon. You must have a death wish. How dare you take my dermic weapon? The exclamations of demons echoed as massacres broke out everywhere. Some of the fiend demons were encircled by other fiend demons the moment they obtained a dermic weapon, and the dermic weapons were taken away right away as well. Chi! A streak of light tore through the air toward Su Zimo's direction and arrived instantly. Su Zimo's expression changed as he reached out to grab the streak of divine light. It was not a dermic weapon, but a scarlet rock that gave off an incomparably scorching aura. It was slightly scalding to the touch. Furthermore, Su Zimo gripped it with his right hand and the divine phoenix bone within was reacting slightly. What's that? He scanned it up and down but could not see anything from it. Hold on. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded. That's a scarlet phoenix blood ore. It's a rare material with utmost yang and flame attributes in the cultivation world. Hurry and keep it. If Dao Lord Extreme Fire wanted to reconstruct a set of skeleton that was suitable for his Dao and dermic powers, he would require 9 rare materials with utmost yang and fire attributes. The Scarlet Phoenix blood ore was one of them. Legend has it that the Scarlet Phoenix blood ore is a rock that has been soaked in the blood of a phoenix. Eventually formed after dozens of thousands of years, it was easy to see how rare this material was. Even money might not be able to purchase such a rare material in the marketplace of the cultivation world. Su Zimo had not expected to come across a piece of it in the Thousand Demon Valley. Previously, he absorbed quite a bit of dragon vein back in the astral dragon sputum lair in the ancient battlefield. Unknowingly, the fortune augmentation on him must have had some effect as well. Hand over that treasure. Right then, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air echoed. 7 fiend demons were charging over. They followed the divine light released by the Scarlet Phoenix blood ore. Su Zimo swept his gaze and could not help but sneer when he sensed that the 7 of them were mid-level fiend demons. He flipped his palm and put away the Scarlet Phoenix blood ore immediately. You must have a death wish. What was that treasure you hid away? A fiend demon approached with killing intent on his face as he pointed at Su Zimo and shouted. The other few fiend demons encircled Su Zimo rapidly with hostile expressions as well. Before long, the expression on one of their faces changed. He pointed at Su Zimo with widened eyes of disbelief and asked in a quivering voice, "Why, you're MO, aren't you? You're not dead?" All the demons witnessed Su Zimo fleeing with blood escape previously with the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak hot on his tails. To all of them, Su Zimo was definitely doomed since he was targeted by an Overlord. However, to think that Su Zimo managed to return alive. At the mention of MO, the remaining few fiend demons also jumped in shock and retreated hurriedly. Only a fiend demon from Levitating Goat Peak that stood at the front remained motionless. Instead, he looked at the remaining fiend demons with mocking expressions and declared loudly, "Why are all of you so scared because of a low-level fiend demon? How shameful. Brother Yang, you arrived late and did not witness this demon's capabilities." A fiend demon tried to explain hurriedly. Unexpectedly, the fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak interrupted with a stifled chuckle. How capable can a low-level fiend demon be? If he doesn't hand that treasure over to me today, I'm going to. What are you going to do? A voice, calm and cold, sounded in the ears of the fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak. Pust. The fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak gasped. Unknowingly, Su Zimo had already appeared before him. It was too fast. Without hesitation, the Fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak wanted to condense an essence spirit's secret skill. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo roared, "Get lost." His voice was like thunder. The figure of the Fiend demon of Levitating Goat Peak shuddered and he froze before he could complete his essence spirit secret skill. In that brief period of time, Su Zimo had already advanced with the momentum and slapped the demon on the head. Piak! The demon's head cracked open and the essence spirit within ruptured into pieces right away. Su Zimo did not stop and had already sped forward. By the time the few Fiend demons snapped out of their stupor, all they were left with was a fleeing back view. Why are there so many dermic weapons flying out all of a sudden? What exactly is hidden underground? Su Zimo muttered softly. This time round, even Dao Lord Extreme Fire did not reply, as though he was seemingly perplexed over what was going on as well. Boom! Right then, another explosion sounded from the ground. The ground shook and the mountains trembled. The already protruding ground exploded completely with a dark rumbling aura, revealing a large burial ground underneath. Countless corpses that seemed to be from a long time ago were amassed within. The flesh on the corpses had already rotted. Even their storage bags were destroyed. Countless dermic weapons were scattered between the corpses. Most of them were dim without light and only a few glowed faintly. It was a huge tomb underground. From the massive skeletons in the tomb, it could be deduced that almost all of the dead corpses originated from demons. Something must have happened here in the past that caused so many demons to be buried in this huge tomb with corpses strewn everywhere. The ground in the surrounding was already dyed red and it was horrific. The many high-level Fiend demons and Overlords who were originally fighting in midair paused as well. They gazed down at the tomb with solemn expressions, their gazes flickered with bewilderment. Suddenly, the old ape reached out and grabbed hold of a blood-colored rock at the edge of the tomb. It was grisly red and reeked of blood. That's the Thousand Demon Blood Crystal. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in Su Zimo's mind with a hint of shock. There must be at least several dozen thousand demons buried in this tomb for a 1,000 demon blood crystal to be formed. Only that amount of blood is enough to create a 1,000 demon blood crystal. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. This place was actually a pit buried with dozens of thousands of demons in the past and a torrential dark aura that was almost corporeal. Only after all this time did it finally see the day of light. The stars above the firmaments became even more chaotic. Countless stars flickered between light and darkness as though they were about to descend. A murderous aura spread through the demon tomb. Chapter 877, Birth of the Sword Art. Chapter 877, Birth of the Sword Art. The ground split open and a 1,000 demon tomb was exposed. Apart from countless bones within, there were also many treasures. Greed filled the eyes of many Fiend demons. Finally, somebody could not hold back any longer and charged forward right away. Thereafter, all the demons swarmed forward towards the 1,000 demon tomb. Demonic chi rumbled. Many demonic arts and weapons clashed in midair and chaos ensued. Up in the skies, the 6 overlords frowned. All of them felt uneasy about something but could not pinpoint the reason why. Something is wrong. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded in Su Zimo's mind. The murderous aura of the 1,000 demon tomb is way too intense. Many of those Fiend demons swarming over are going to die. Su Zimo's gaze was sharp as lightning and he scanned the place with a tense expression, as though he was searching for something. A moment later, Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he vanished from the spot in a flash. Among the demons, Monkey, the Spirit Tiger, Ching Ching, Little Fox and Solitary Cloud formed a 5-man formation and followed the demons to charge into the 1,000 demon tomb. The Rat King stumbled and followed behind them. The Spirit Tiger asked softly as he sprinted, "Brother Monkey, will that old ape keep your rod for himself after using it?" "No." Monkey shook his head. Given his strength, he could have killed us a long time ago if he truly wanted to snatch it for himself. Why would he wait till now? Don't get worried for nothing. Qing pursed her lips. The Overlord has already asked Second to get closer with his granddaughter. Why will he want to hurt Second? True. The spirit tiger nodded. Little Fox was worried and asked softly, what about young master? Why is there no news of him after such a long time? In a way, no news is good news. Solitary Cloud said in a deep voice, at least, this means that the Overlord of Levitating Goat Peak has yet to succeed. During this period of time, Monkey and the others had already arrived at the edge of the Thousand Demon Tomb. Right as they were about to leap in, a figure dashed before them. Who's there? Monkey and the others were alarmed and attacked before they could think twice. Monkey's flesh expanded and he hurled a punch forward. It slammed down instantly like a gigantic blood-red seal. The spirit tiger reached out with his claws. Clang! Clang! Above the claws, 4 grisly white sharp fangs protruded and flashed coldly as he thrust at the figure at the front. Qing's azure green feather fan flapped and a ball of green flames were produced. Solitary Cloud's cultivation surpassed Monkey and the other two and his eyes lit up. He had already recognized who the intruder was. Although Little Fox did not see the person's appearance clearly, she frowned and sniffed. When she caught scent of a familiar aura, she did not attack as well. In the blink of an eye, Monkey, the spirit tiger and Qing's attacks descended. The intruder released a punch and collided against Monkey's gigantic seal. He flicked out fingernails that were sharp as daggers with his other hand and a chain of sparks were produced as they clashed against the incoming tiger claws. Monkey and the spirit tiger shuddered and retreated a half-step backwards. In midair, the ball of green flames had already arrived. The intruder opened his mouth and blew forward, extinguishing the ball of flames. It's me. The intruder shouted softly, don't head over. The figure was none other than Su Zimo. The place was extremely chaotic with demonic chi surging everywhere. Any spirit consciousness that was released would be dispersed immediately and it was impossible to make use of voice transmissions. As such, Su Zimo could only make a move personally to hold back Monkey and the others. First. Young Master. Master. Monkey and the others exclaimed with delighted expressions. Su Zimo took a step forward and said, this tomb is extremely dangerous, don't join them. Follow me first. With that, he led the way and retreated with Monkey and the others. Although there were some fiend demons among the demons that recognized Su Zimo, all of them were filled with greed with treasures right before them and none of them could be bothered with Su Zimo. Outside the perimeter, Su Zimo said in a deep voice, something big is definitely going to happen soon. If you see me make a move, don't be worried. Take good care of yourselves and return to Howling Moon Mountain as soon as possible. When the time is right, I'll naturally return to look for you guys. Monkey and the others saw Su Zimo's stern expression and felt their hearts skip a beat as they nodded in agreement. Right then, a commotion sounded from within the Thousand Demon Tomb. It was as though something was being ripped and sliced apart forcefully. TSK. 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 One after another, blinding white light shot out from beneath the Thousand Demon Tomb. They were incomparably sharp and ripped the tomb apart. Many fiend demons that were fighting for the treasures in the tomb could not manage to react in time and were shredded into two by the streaks of white light. Splinted limbs flew everywhere and fresh blood spewed. The white lights that burst out from beneath the tomb increased in quantity. The Thousand Demon Tomb was already lined with dense cracks and warm corpses mounted on top of it with so much blood that could form a river. In that single instant, more than 10,000 fiend demons were killed. Their essence spirits could not even escape in time. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said sternly, when the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. The killing intent of this sword art is so strong that even stars can be shifted out of alignment. Those fiend demons that entered are merely sending themselves to death. The heaven-slaying sword art is about to be born and it's using the blood of the fiend demons as a tribute. The 6 overlords in midair shouted at the same time, "All of you, hurry and retreat." Although they did not know what was going on beneath the tomb, the white lights released sent their hearts racing. Was that sword chi? What sword chi would be this powerful that even the 6 of them felt like they were going to be sliced apart? TSK. 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 The moment the 6 overlords finished their sentence, an even denser sword chi burst forth from beneath the tomb. It was searing and burst into the clouds with a blazing white shade. Few of the fiend demons that charged into the tomb were spared. Monkey and the others stood from afar and felt a sense of trepidation as they watched the scene unfold. If Su Zimo had not stopped them in time, the few of them would have become part of the corpses of Thousand Demon Valley. Boom! Suddenly, the Thousand Demon tomb exploded. A gigantic ball of light rose slowly from underground with a blinding brilliance. It was like a blazing sun and was surrounded by boundless sword chi. The 6 overlords were startled and burst in retreat. The sword chi on that ball of light was way too terrifying. If they reacted slower and were drawn inside, they would have been killed with their essence spirits destroyed as well. What's that? What sort of a treasure is it to possess such a might that could trigger a universal phenomenon? The gazes of the 6 overlords flickered and they looked bewildered. The ball of light was way too humongous. Their bodies that were several hundred feet tall were as insignificant as dust when compared to the ball of light. They could not see what was within the ball of light with their vision. The moment their spirit consciousness descended upon the ball of light, it was sliced into particles by boundless sword chi. A withered and yellowed ancient manual. Suddenly, Su Zimo said softly as he gazed into the ball of light. Dao Lord Extreme Fire's heart skipped a beat and he asked hurriedly, "You're able to see what's within?" The ball of light should have been created by the heaven-slaying sword art. However, even with his cultivation, he could not peer through the veil of the body of light. He could not see what was within at all. "I can vaguely see something." Su Zimo nodded. His right eye looked extremely sinister and was mostly white. It glowed in a blinding manner and everything was repressed within. Unknowingly, he was already circulating Illumination Dragon Eye. This doesn't make any sense. Dao Lord Extreme Fire frowned. Given your cultivation realm, you shouldn't be able to see through the ball of light even if you had cultivated Illumination Dragon Eye. He paused for a moment and an idea struck his mind as he blurted, "I got it. It's the Illumination Stone." Chapter 878, 3 Great Dao Lords. Chapter 878, 3 Great Dao Lords. Dao Lord Extreme Fire said, "If you can see through the veil of the ball of light, it means we've got the advantage. Should we make a move now?" Su Zimo asked. "Wait a while more." Dao Lord Extreme Fire was extremely calm and said in a deep voice, "There are other people around here." "Other people?" Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He could clearly tell that Dao Lord Extreme Fire was not referring to fiend demons, but humans. Right then, the old ape's 2 long brows fluttered without wind. He spun around violently and glared into the voids not far away with a gaze as sharp as a saber, hollering, "Who is hiding over there? Get out!" Foo-foo. Mocking and teasing laughter filled the air and a relaxed voice sounded, "You are all nothing but a bunch of beasts. What can you guys do to me if I come out?" Immediately after, a fluctuation appeared in midair. A man dressed in luxurious robes rode over on the wind in a suave manner. He had elegant features and was dignified and handsome. Wielding a folding fan in his hands, there was an indescribable charm and grace to him. "How dare you? Who are you calling beasts?" "Huh. Your aura. A human cultivator. This is a human cultivator." Many high-level fiend demons looked over and discovered before long that there was no hint of demonic chi on this person. Instead, there was the aura of a human cultivator. The Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp said coldly, "You're nothing more than a Dharma characteristic of the human race. You must have a death wish for coming here alone. The combat strength of a Dharma characteristic was comparable to high-level fiend demons. However, despite the menacing gazes of so many fiend demons, there was no hint of panic in the eyes of this man. Instead, he looked composed and curled his lips gently with a bewitching smile. Su Zimo noticed the emblem on this man's robes a long time ago and knew that he was from one of the 7 fiend sects, Cloud Rain sect. To think that it's him. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded. Su Zimo asked, Senior, you know who he is? His Tao title is Cloud Rain and he's the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect. Tao Lord Extreme Fire seemed to dislike this person a lot and sneered, to think that even after 5,000 years have passed, this sniveling thief is still at the same cultivation realm and has not grown at all. Despite Tao Lord Extreme Fire's remark, Su Zimo did not dare to underestimate this man. The deeper one's cultivation was, the harder it would be for them to progress in the later stages. At the Dharma characteristic realm, one's lifespan extends to 10,000 years. It was only normal for somebody's cultivation realm to remain stagnant after cultivating for hundreds or even thousands of years. Furthermore, the fact that this person, Tao Lord Cloud Rain, could remain as the titular disciple for 5,000 years meant that he was not someone easy to deal with. Let me correct 2 things. Tao Lord Cloud Rain looked at the Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp and smiled idly before saying in a slow and unhurried manner, First, I'm not alone. Second, you can't kill me either. The moment he said that, a snowstorm appeared in the voids and the temperature dipped instantly. Thereafter, countless snowflakes condensed in midair and formed a bridge of ice that extended to the distant horizons. A slim figure strode over. In the blink of an eye, she arrived. It was another Dharma characteristic of the human race. It's a cultivator from Snowdrift Valley. Su Zimo said deeply. Tao Lord Extreme Fire nodded. I don't recognize this woman, so she should be my junior. However, since she's qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with Tao Lord Cloud Rain, she should not be weak. Someone else with a death wish. The Overlord of Golden Flames Mountain roared in laughter. The Overlord of Thousand Snake Island laughed in amusement as she said in a flirting manner, this is quite the beauty. Can you guys bear to kill her? Due to the cultivation techniques they cultivated, the female cultivators of Snowdrift Valley exuded coldness that made them seem like ice mountains that isolated themselves from everyone else. However, this woman's features were truly pure, peerless and ravishing. All of you had better give way. The female cultivator of Snowdrift Valley said coldly. He. The Overlord of Thousand Demon Valley could not help but laugh. Ice Beauty, this is the Thousand Demon Valley, not your sect. You're at the wrong place if you want to throw a tantrum. The female cultivator of Snowdrift Valley did not speak anymore, but her expression turned colder. Su Zimo frowned and murmured softly, What are they doing here? Could it be? They should be here for the heaven-slaying sword art. Tao Lord Extreme Fire nodded. I'm guessing that someone among them managed to tell that a sword art was about to be born, judging from the universal phenomenon in Thousand Demon Valley. Originally, it was already extremely difficult for Su Zimo to snatch the sword art from the watch of many high-level fiend demons and 6 overlords. Now that 2 more Dharma characteristics had appeared, it was even more difficult for Su Zimo to get his hands on the sword art. The old ape asked deeply, Why are the 2 of you here now? Naturally, we're here to retrieve something that belongs to the human race. Tao Lord Cloud Rain whipped out his folding fan and pointed to the ball of light that hovered in midair not far away. Ha 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 ha. The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley roared in laughter as though he had just heard the greatest joke in the world. This is a treasure that was born in the Thousand Demon Valley. Who was the one who said that this belongs to the human race? I did. Another voice sounded. Shoo. A streak of light shimmered from the distant horizons and the sound of sharp swords tearing through the air echoed, arriving instantly. A white-robed cultivator stood in midair with a long sword behind his back. His long hair fluttered and he had a prideful expression. His gaze was sharp as a sword and he exuded an indescribable razor-edged aura. It was a Dharma characteristic from Sword Sect. This man isn't simple either. Tao Lord Extreme Fire's voice sounded. Su Zimo nodded. The fact that the three of them dared to venture deep into the Thousand Demon Valley was proof that their courage and boldness was unmatched by ordinary men. The Tao Lord of Sword Sect pointed to the ball of light in midair and said indifferently, "That item belongs to us humans and now, I want to take it away. Which of you wants to stand in my way?" His statement was extremely unreasonable and arrogant, as though he looked down on all the demons in the Thousand Demon Valley completely. "I do, what about it?" A high-level fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley stood out and his gigantic wolf body streaked through the void. He glared keenly at the Tao Lord of Sword Sect with olive-green eyes that were filled with sharp killing intent. "Whoever stands in my way shall die." The Tao Lord of Sword Sect spoke slowly. Before he completed his sentence, he withdrew his sword. Thereafter, a frightening sword light surfaced and tore through the layers of void, descending upon the head of the fiend demon from Silvermoon Valley instantly. Everywhere the sword chi passed by, the life force in the air seemed to be reaped. Lifeless sword art. Tao Lord Extreme Fire exclaimed softly. Before that fiend demon of Silvermoon Valley could make any move, his glabella was penetrated by the sword light and his life force was drained rapidly. In the blink of an eye, his entire body withered. A high-level fiend demon was killed instantly by a sword strike. Su Zimo felt his scalp prickle at the sight of that. Although he was only watching from afar, he could not muster any form of resistance against that sword strike. All of his trump cards seemed insignificant in the face of that sword strike. The power of the divine phoenix bone was probably the only thing in his possession that could defend against that sword strike. However, Su Zimo knew extremely well that the sword strike could kill him before he could bring out his divine phoenix bone. Lifeless sword art. A single sword strike that could annihilate all life force. That is truly an incredible sword strike. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said slowly, "Legend has it that the founder master of Sword Sect once obtained one section of the three great ancient sword arts. The lifeless sword art was derived from that single section of the ancient sword art." Chapter 879, Massive Battle. Chapter 879, Massive Battle. Su Zimo was startled at that statement. If the lifeless sword art was derived from one of the three great ancient sword arts, how frightening was the power of the three great ancient sword arts. Su Zimo was filled with boundless hope towards the heaven-slaying sword art. Back in the past, the ancient sword art was a huge reason why the founder master of Sword Sect was able to reign as the emperor of the Sword Dao and establish the #1 sword sect in Tianhuang mainland. Tao Lord Extreme Fire said, however, nobody knows which of the three sword arts the Sword Emperor had in his possession. The entire battlefield descended into a momentary silence with the death of a high-level fiend demon and the obliteration of his essence spirit through a single sword strike. Everyone, the 6 overlords included, were stunned by that sword strike. A moment later, the old ape's white brows fluttered and he locked his gaze onto Tao Lord Cloud Rain, saying indifferently, "If I'm not wrong, you should be Tao Lord Cloud Rain, the #2 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. You're pretty knowledgeable." Tao Lord Cloud Rain flapped his folding fan gently and smiled with a bewitching charm. The Dharma characteristic ranking. There were 3 ranking lists that were renowned in Tianhuang mainland. They were the Golden Core Phenomenon, Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic and Supreme Divine Powers rankings. All of them were released by Enigma Palace and encompassed almost all the paragons and monster incarnates in history. In other words, they were the most authoritative and renowned ranking lists. Among them, the Golden Core Phenomenon ranking was refreshed every 100 years. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking was refreshed every 1,000 years. As for the Supreme Divine Powers ranking, only the most terrifying Supreme Divine Powers in history were recorded. Unless divine powers that could surpass the might of past divine powers were created by the future generation, the Supreme Divine Powers ranking was almost never refreshed otherwise. The Daos of the 7 fiend sects are different. For example, Overlord Palace specializes in body tempering while Illusion Fiend Cult specializes in mental state cultivation. As for Cloud Rain Sect, humph. Tao Lord Cloud Rain seemed to be in disdain and harumphed. All in all, the combat strength of Cloud Rain Sect cultivators are ranked last within the 7 Fiend sects. Previously, he was indeed capable to suppress many paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects and kill his way to the number 2 position of the Dharma characteristic ranking. However, I don't know if he has grown after all these years. In midair, the old ape shifted his gaze towards the man and woman from Snowdrift Valley and Sword Sect respectively and said in a slow manner, "I'm sure the two of you are not nobodies to be able to accompany Tao Lord Cloud Rain here on the same footing. I haven't exited the valley in recent years. Indeed, I've become rather ignorant and can't tell who the two of you are." Naturally, Tao Lord Cloud Rain and the other two could tell that among the 6 overlords, the old ape had the most reserved aura and his combat strength was the most unpredictable. However, the female cultivator of Snowdrift Valley had an aloof nature. Even against human cultivators, she might not bother to reply to them, let alone a bunch of fiend demons. The man from Sword Sect was even prouder. His hands were behind his back and unknowingly, his sword had already been returned to his sheath. He looked up into the sky as though he had not heard the old ape's question at all. On the other hand, Tao Lord Cloud Rain smiled and said, "This fairy's Tao title is Snowdrift." He paused intentionally at the mention of that. Everyone realized that this was another titular disciple. The smile on Tao Lord Cloud Rain's face deepened as he continued, "Fairy Snowdrift was the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking 2,000 years ago." The expressions of the 6 overlords changed slightly. As overlords, they naturally knew of the cultivation world's Dharma characteristic ranking. There were a total of 72 spots on the Dharma characteristic ranking. The combat strength of Fairy Snowdrift was obvious to all if she was able to be the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. The reputation of the two of them was enough to kill someone. They were the number 1 and 2 of their respective Dharma characteristic rankings. It was equivalent to Su Zimo and Diin back in the ancient battlefield. If the two of them had appeared together, which golden core wouldn't be fearful? Tao Lord Cloud Rain pointed to the man of Sword Sect and quipped with a chuckle, "I'd advise you guys not to provoke this guy. He is the number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking and the current titular disciple of Sword Sect with the Tao title of Immortal Sword. Nobody can survive against his sword, lifelessness ensues from his sword. 2 number 1s and a number 2 of the Dharma characteristic ranking as well as 3 titular disciples. The reputation of any single one of them could shock the entire world. Now that these 3 Tao Lords were gathered in the 1,000 Demon Valley, it was obvious what they were after. "So, you guys are Tao Lords on the Dharma characteristic ranking. It's no wonder why you're fearless." The Overlord of Silvermoon Valley said coldly, "However, we don't know if you're going to live up to your reputations just yet. I don't care who you guys are, nobody who tries to steal something from 1,000 Demon Valley shall be allowed to leave alive." The voice of the Overlord of Confusion Mist Swamp was metallic and resolute. Many high-level fiend demons present were stunned by the reputation of the 3 Tao Lords. However, what sort of characters were the 6 Overlords? All of them reigned over a region with countless demons under their charge, all of them had firm mental states that were almost unshakable. There was no way the 6 overlords would fear opponents that were at similar cultivation realms as them. Furthermore, the Ball of Light was clearly extraordinary if 3 Tao Lords of the human race were willing to venture deep into the 1,000 Demon Valley and brave the dangers for it. That fact alone made the 6 overlords even more curious about the Ball of Light and they were bent on getting their hands on it. The 6 overlords exchanged glances. Although they were fighting earlier on, at this moment, all of them had a tacit understanding and harbored the same thought. No matter who had their hands on the Ball of Light eventually, it must not be the 3 Tao Lords of the human race. 1,000 Demon Valley could not afford to be disgraced as such either. Suddenly, the world went silent. Many fiend demons, the 6 overlords and the 3 Tao Lords remained motionless. To begin with, the birth of the heaven-slaying sword art filled the area with a shuddering murderous aura. Now that both parties were in a standoff, the killing intent in the void was even more intense and startling. Attack! After a brief silence, the 6 overlords roared at almost the same time. Roar! Groar! Within the world, countless demons roared and the heavens quaked while the earth rumbled. Mountains shook and dust flew everywhere with gravel mixed in. The 6 overlords reverted to their true forms and struck Dao Lord Cloud Rain's group at the same time. The other high-level fiend demons moved in to form an encirclement as well. Instantly, Dharmic powers howled, surged and rumbled. Countless demonic arts tore through the air and descended with an engulfing, frightening might. They were everywhere and even the weather changed because of them. Even mid-level fiend demons would be destroyed instantly in the aftershock if they rushed forward, let alone low-level fiend demons. From all directions, fiend demons retreated constantly and hid as they watched the battle from afar. Dao Lord Cloud Rain focused his gaze and a demonic glint shone in his eyes. It was as though countless threads were weaving in an increasingly dense manner. 7 emotions threads. Dao Lord Cloud Rain shouted. In midair, colorful, pretty threads spouted in midair around all the high-level fiend demons. Dao Lord Cloud Rain swept his gaze across. The threads coiled around them endlessly. They increased in number and coiled even tighter. Furthermore, all of these threads were connected to Dao Lord Cloud Rain's palms in a dense manner. The 7 emotions threads. To think that I would see this Dharmic art again after 5,000 years. Dao Lord Extreme Fire sounded sad and emotional. The 7 emotions threads is the ultimate skill of Cloud Rain's sect, and there are extremely few cultivators who manage to cultivate it successfully. Dao Lord Cloud Rain is one of them. Be it human cultivators or fiend demons, all of them possess the 7 emotions and 6 desires. The 7 emotions threads are meant to trigger the 7 types of emotions that all living beings harbor within their bodies. The more emotional one was, the more they would be affected and the greater the damage they would suffer. As Dao Lord Extreme Fire described the skill, Su Zimo witnessed blood seeping out from the bodies of the high-level fiend demons bound by the 7 emotions threads. The 7 emotions threads cut into their bodies in a frightening manner. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.